Hi
Sweat
dear.
rolled down Naruto's
What
face
if I told you
as
that
he
you can
attempted
get
to
more
catch his sweat
exclusive
glisten through
and more
night as it
exciting
gave off a
content?
goldish light.
You can become a Hokage
Naruto was in
in
Nine
a
Tails
hidden
chakra
village
mode
of lonely
and was golden
kunoichi.
light that illuminated the
For
dark
that,
night.
you just need to
The
go
man
to
standing
my
in front
boosty.
of him was
The
the
link
complete
will be in the
opposite.
description.
Hi's presence darkened the night even further, and his malicious red eye gave the night an eerie feeling. The man standing in front of him was no other than Obito Uchiha. Naruto looked to his left, and looked at his Jinchuriki friend, B. Looking to his right stood his lifelong senseis, Might Guy and Kakashi Hatake. Looking at both of them, he understood one thing: they were all at their limits. Naruto took a deep breath, and closed his eyes for a brief second. What do? I need to end this quickly, then I still have to deal with Jubi. Naruto, watch out! The cry of Kurama was deafening to Naruto's ears, as he quickly looked up. Inches away from his face was Obito Uchiha. Naruto attempted to jump back, but he watched as Obito touched his shoulder. It's over, Kyuubi brat. Dio something! Shouted Kurama. Naruto felt his body quickly being sucked into Obito's dimension, and the reality of the situation had reached Naruto's head. He was about to lose the fourth great ninja war. Move! Naruto! Move! Naruto's body was slowly becoming sucked into Obito's dimension, and his body suddenly acted on its own. Using every ounce of power he had, he applied the wind nature transformation to his head, but instead of using his wind chakra, he used the Kyuubi's. Naruto's arm was able to break away from the power of Kamui, and struck Obito through the heart. Naruto and Obito's chakra quickly melded together, and a bright light illuminated the night. Then all at once that golden light turned into a black hole darker than the night sky. Naruto cursed out loud, as he felt himself being pulled into the dark hole. Stay away! Kakashi, who had been running forward, suddenly stopped. Naruto! Damn you, Naruto Uzumaki! Shouted Obito as he was completely engulfed by the black hole. Naruto watched in terror as both his legs were already inside of it. He grunted out loud as he tried to pull back. Kurama! We need to enter Bijou mode. Kurama cursed out loud. It's too late for that, brat. Get ready for the ride, it's going to be a painful one. Naruto watched as his body was slowly engulfed in chakra so dense that his body was not visible no more. Naruto looked back at Kakashi. Don't worry about me. Take care of the Jubi, and I'll be B-dash. Naruto was cut off, as he was finally engulfed by the black hole. Line. Naruto's eyes opened slowly, and the first thing he saw was a bunch of tree branches. Naruto blinked, and slowly stood up. Looking down at his body, he was surprised to see a couple of scratches. Naruto stood up slowly, and he felt pain throughout his whole body. What the hell happened? Why is my body in so much pain? Kid! Behind you! Naruto's instincts kicked in, and he quickly pulled out a kunai. Turning around, he blocked Obito's black rod. Obito sneered. What the hell did you do? Where did you send us? You bastard! You ruined everything! Naruto easily dodged, and blocked all his attacks. Taking a better look at Obito, he was thankful for Kurama. Obito's body was completely burned, and he looked almost like a mummified person. What are you talking about? You idiot! We're no longer in the elemental nations. You opened a portal to a different world. That chakra of that damned fox interfered with my jutsu. I have no fucking idea where we are, and how to get back, shouted Obito. Naruto's eyes widened. What, so Kakashi, B, and Guy were no longer with them? Obito roared and attacked Naruto. Of course. Is it that hard to understand? Naruto shook his head. I need to defeat him first, then I'll worry about getting home. His Sharingan and Rinnegan are still intact, but I doubt he can use the Mangekyo Sharingan right now. But I don't have much chakra left either. My body used up most of it to heal my wounds. Naruto pulled out a kunai and thrust at Obito. He watched as Obito jumped out of the projectile's path. Just as I thought, he can't use the Mangekyo. This is my chance. Naruto raced forward and threw a kunai at Obito's head. Obito merely moved his head to the side and averted the kunai. Naruto smirked, and in a split second he substituted himself with the same kunai. Obito's eyes widened, and Naruto smirked. Not as fast as Dad's, but this will do. Naruto formed a Rasengan with one hand, and put his left hand over it. My control over the Rasengan has gotten so good that I only need to use one hand. So now I can use my left hand to add wind. A smaller version of his Raisin Shuriken appeared in his hand, and Naruto thrust it right into Obito's back. Take this. Wind release, Rasengan! Naruto's Rasengan exploded into the back of Obito Uchiha, and smaller version of the Raisin Shuriken occurred. Naruto jumped away, and watched as Obito's lifeless body fell to the ground. Naruto fell back, and took a deep breath. It's finally over. You killed him! Naruto turned around, and was surprised to see a blonde-haired boy there. Taking a closer look, he noticed that he could be no older than 12 years, but he could see it in his eyes. Even in this world, pain is existent in the lives of young ones. The boy stepped into the light of the moon, and a scar above his right blue eye was visible. Naruto looked at him. I usually don't kill my opponents, but I had no choice. He was too much of a threat to keep alive. Had I left him be, he would cause great harm to this world, and to be honest, I don't know if I would have been able to beat him a second time. He was weakened right now, and his true power was disabled. So you must be pretty weak, if you had to wait until he was weakened. I bet I could have taken him down no problem. I'm a true dragon slayer after all, shouted the kid. I've slayed a dragon. Naruto's sweat dropped. Well, is that what a dragon slayer should do? I mean, their name is literally Dragon Slayer, and there's no way you could have beaten him at full power. He's a pain in the ass to beat. Not mention that damn Kamui technique of his. Kamui? What type of wizard uses that type of magic? Asked the boy. Suddenly a small cat walked from underneath him. What type of wizard are you? Are you a wind mage since you just used wind magic? Naruto looked down at the cat and the boy. A summon? What are you talking about? What's magic? And wizards? The blonde boy was about to respond, when Naruto's eyes suddenly widened in shock. He suddenly coughed out blood, and the boy in front of him shouted. What's going on? Naruto looked down at his stomach, and noticed a metal rod pierce through his stomach. Turning around, he looked Obito in the face. How? Are you still alive? Wait a minute, you're Sharingan. Nice of you to notice, Naruto. You did kill me, but I used the forbidden Uchiha Jutsu, Izanagi. In exchange for one Sharingan, they can cast a genjutsu that can make fantasy into reality. So when Izanagi was activated, I simply erased my death, replied Obito with a grin. The young boy who had been standing in front of both of them stood there in terror. That's insane! Naruto growled. Why can't you just die already? Does it matter if I die or not? I'm not going to allow you to return back to our world. Madara is still there, and even in his form he could still activate Infinite Tsukuyomi. It's a long shot, but a shot I'm willing to take. All I have to do is kill you, spoke Obito. Naruto stood there confused. What are you talking about? You were serious about a different world? Of course, you idiot. Isn't this boy proof enough? Dragons? Wizards? Dark guilds? That doesn't exist in our world. We're in a total different dimension, shouted Obito. Naruto's eyes widened. So, you weren't bluffing? I'm just going to kill you now, shouted Obito. Naruto growled. As if I'll let you, hhh. To Obito's shock, Naruto grabbed the metal rod embedded in him, and pulled it out of his stomach. The rod slipped out of Obito's hand, and his head collided into Naruto's back. Naruto placed a hand on the hole in his stomach, and spinned around. Obito had fallen back for a moment, and Naruto used the distraction to his advantage. Forcing chakra into the metal rod, he slammed it into Obito's Rinnegan. Wind blade. The rod was engulfed in wind chakra, and it easily pierced through Obito's eye socket. The rod went through Obito's head, and sticked out the opposite side of his head. Naruto let go of the rod, and he kicked Obito back. Obito's lifeless body fell to the ground, and Naruto pulled out a kunai with the 3 explosive notes on it. He tossed them at Obito's body, and Naruto quickly grabbed the boy and his cat. In a split second, Naruto shined both of them out of the way. Line. The blonde boy was shocked at the action of the older blonde. He pierced that rod through his eye socket. The boy could feel his own stomach doing flips, and uneasily stood there. He watched as the other man fell lifelessly to the ground. The boy had killed a dragon, but he had never seen another human die. The cat underneath him looked at him. I think it's better if we run for it, Before the boy could respond, he watched the blond man pull out some pieces of paper and a knife, and throw it at the dead body. Before he could even utter a word, the blond man was upon both him and his cat. Then the blond boy felt his world spin, and he was no longer in the forest. They were standing on the edge of a cliff towering over the small forest. Then Sting watched an enormous explosion light up the night sky. "How did you do that? You made those pieces of paper explode!" Thump! The boy turned around and watched the blond man standing on the ground breathing hard. Taking a better look, the boy watched the hole in the man's stomach close up. Sting's eyes widened. "You can do healing magic too! You're insane!" Naruto looked at the boy. "What's your name, kid? And the cat too?" "My name's Sting Eucliffe," replied the boy. Then Sting pointed at the cat. "And this isn't my cat. He's my friend. And his name's Lecter." The cat waved at him. "Hi, I'm Lecter." Naruto took a deep breath. "Sting? Lecter? Well, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. Listen up, guys, I'm not actually from around here." "Oh, I was meaning to ask you that. Is it true that you're from another dimension?" asked Sting with his eyes wide open. Naruto grunted as he felt Kurama's chakra finally heal his wound. "Man, that hurt a lot, Kurama? Kurama? I guess. I really don't know. By the way, what's a kid like you doing out here anyway?" "It's the middle of the night, and we're in the middle of a forest," asked Naruto. Sting scratched the back of his head as he let out a big smile. "We were going back home, and I decided to take a shortcut." "A shortcut that got us completely lost," added Lecter. Sting laughed nervously. "We were lost, but now I know the way back home. It's just around this cliff here." "Won't your parents be worried?" asked Naruto. Naruto quickly regretted his question, as he watched Sting's facial expressions change. "I don't have any parents, mine died long ago." Naruto looked at Sting, and back at Lecter. He watched as the little cat tried to cheer up his friend. "I guess life hasn't been fair to either of us, huh?" Sting looked at him a bit confused. "What do you mean?" Naruto grunted as he tried to get up. Though in the end the pain was too great, and he sat still. "What do I mean? I'm also an orphan, Sting. In fact, my parents died not too soon after I was born. I know that being an orphan is tough, but you shouldn't get down about it." "How would you know? I have no family left. I'm all alone in this world," shouted Sting as he began to cry. "I killed my father in order to become a true dragon slayer, but it doesn't replace this empty feeling in my heart." Naruto looked at the boy. "So I'm assuming that dragon slayers are actually taught by dragons. This is an odd world, but Sting, you aren't alone in this world." "What?" asked Sting. Naruto pointed at Lecter. "I can tell this cat cares a lot about you, so why can't he be your family? And you know that empty feeling in your heart? There's only one way to fill that hole, and that is by having your friends fill it for you." "Huh? How does that work?" asked Sting. Naruto was about to reply, when he felt a sharp pain in the back of his head. "Oh no, I've reached my limits. Naruto!" That was the last thing Naruto heard before he fell into a state of unconsciousness. Line 2 months later. 1 month it took Naruto to recover, and another month to learn everything about this new world. The night was pitch black, and Naruto was heading out of a small hut. Behind him stood the blond boy that had grown quite attached to him. Naruto turned around and looked at the boy. "I guess this is it, Sting and Lecter. I'm going to out and find a way to travel home." The blonde looked down at his feet. "Will I ever see you again?" "I don't know. If I find a way home, you probably won't. But if I don't, I bet you'll hear about me eventually. I was never a person to stay quiet for long," replied Naruto with a smile. Sting looked up at Naruto with saddened eyes. "So if there's a chance of you not leaving, why don't you let me tag along?" Naruto shook his head. "'Cause if I do end up leaving, I know it will be very painful for you. As well, I think you should go and carve your own path. There's no need to follow in my footsteps. You're a very talented dragon slayers, and soon you'll be able to join a guild. Once you do, you must make lots of friends because that's the only way you will get stronger. I've told you this a bunch of times, haven't I?" Sting nodded. "Those who break the rules are scum, but those who even abandon one of their friends are worse than scum. But Naruto, aren't you abandoning me?" Naruto blinked, and then replied. "I can see who you can see that, but this is the best plan for both of us. I'm sure you'll make a lot of friends, and one day you might even forget about me. That's not true. You're like my first friend, there's no way I would forget you, never, replied Sting. Naruto sighed. He really doesn't want to let me go, but it's for the best. Naruto reached for his headband, and took it off his head. He then kneeled down to Sting's eye level. Extend your arm. Sting doing that extended his arm, and watched as Naruto tied the headband around Sting's arm. If I don't end up going home, I'll be sure to come back looking for this, so one day when you're strong and old enough, I'll come back and take it. Then we'll be reunited. If I do end up leaving, then I guess it will just be something worth remembering me by. Sting looked at the headband with shock. But you told me. Yeah, it's the thing I hold most precious to me, but it's now my gift to you, replied Naruto. Sting let out a few tears. Thank you, Naruto. Naruto smiled, and he patted Sting on the head. Tell Lecter bye for me, may our paths cross once again, Sting. Naruto turned around, and he began walking away from the small hut. As Naruto walked away, Sting let out a few tears. Thank you, Naruto, for everything. Flashback. It had been a few days after Naruto's appearance on Earthland. Naruto was sitting on the bed, with Sting by his side. Sting looked up to Naruto. Can I ask you something, Naruto? What is it, Sting? Sting looked at him. What did you mean that only your friends could feel the hole in your heart? Naruto looked at him. Oh, that? Well, isn't it obvious? Tell me what caused that hole in your heart. Sting looked down. The guilt of killing my father. So, in other words, pain? Replied Naruto. Sting just sheepishly nodded. Naruto sighed. Let me tell you something, Sting. When a person learns to love, they also risk learning things like hatred and pain, and no matter how much we try, it's almost impossible to get rid of pain and hatred alone. So, how do you do it? How do you get rid of this feeling? Asked Sting. You have others fill that hole with love. You must rely on your friends and family to fill that hole for you. Their love is the only cure for that pain, replied Naruto as he smiled. Sting looked at him with eyes widened in shock. Love, friendship, that's the cure? Naruto nodded. Well, that's the best answer I've managed to find. Line. Sting looked up to Naruto. Thank you, Naruto, for filling that hole for me. And reminding me I'm not the monster I thought I was. Naruto, having heard the boy's exclamation, merely chuckled, and whispered into the wind. Good luck, Sting. Line 1 month later. Naruto was walking through the mountains, as he moved at a quick pace. Naruto raced across the darkening sky, as he ran towards the middle of nowhere. Naruto looked up in the sky, and saw a swirling cloud forming. Is that it, Kurama? Yes. That's the power source, similar to the one that sent us here. This is the 4th time I've sensed it over the past 3 months. At last we've caught up to it. I sense somewhere there. Now hurry before we miss our window again. Naruto nodded, as he had missed the guy last time. As he raced across the trees, he looked to his left at a pair of trees. He stopped for a moment. I swear I sense someone there. Hurry up! Naruto! Naruto growled at Kurama. I'm going! Then he launched forward. As Naruto ran off, a head formed out of the trunk of the tree. Then its eyes opened wide. Line. Naruto appeared perched at the top of tree. Naruto looked forward, and watched a man with staffs implanted in the ground stood. He watched as the dimensional drift in the air begun to close. Do you see that, Kurama? Why would he be closing a dimensional opening? Or whatever that is. I don't know. It can be for countless of reasons. He's almost done, so enter Sage Mode and take him down. Naruto sighed. Sage Mode, Kurama? Isn't that a bit an overkill? This guy doesn't even have magic or chakra. That may be true, but those staves he carries are very troublesome. I can sense a large amount of power from them. Naruto sighed. Whatever you say. Naruto sat down, and began gathering natural energy. Line. Mystigan took a deep breath. Finally, that's over with. Now I can go back to the guild, and take another mission. Mystigan turned around, and was shocked to see a fox masked person standing there. Mystigan's eyes widened. That fox mask, that looks like the same masked man that was rumored around Shiritsum town. Who are you? Asked Mystigan. I didn't even sense him, even though it's like a ghost is standing in front of me. Underneath the mask, Naruto grinned. I could ask you the same thing. How did you open that dimensional portal? And where does it lead to? Mystigan glared at him. I don't know what you're talking about. Lies, you just closed that portal. Where does it go to? Can you make one? Asked Naruto. Mystigan looked at him. Are you from Idolos? If so, you're better off here. I assure you Earthland is a far better place than Idolos. Naruto frowned. Idolos? I don't know, I'm from a place called the Elemental Nations. Is that what it's called? Elemental Nations? Idolos is a place with no magic, it's the counterpart of this world, replied Mystigan. Naruto sighed. Wait, can you open a portal to different dimensions? Mystigan frowned. I've answered enough of your questions, now tell me who are you exactly? How did you get here? My name's Naruto Uzumaki, and as I see I'm just like you. I ended up in this world, just like you. Correct? Asked Naruto. You must be from this Idolos, that's why you know so much about it. Seeing that Mystigan wasn't going to answer, Naruto glared at him under the mask. To make long story short, I came here by accident. With no idea how to return, in fact this is probably the last chance I had of going back home. So tell me Mystigan, how do you open that portal? Can it lead to other dimensions? Mystigan shook his head. No, I can't open that portal. I merely close it to disallow the other side from stealing magic from this world. No, it cannot lead to other worlds, the only reason it reaches this world is because it's so close to it. Naruto sighed. So, another dead end, great. Naruto turned around and began walking away. Mystigan shouted out. Wait! Where are you going? I don't know, maybe find a way to get back to my world, replied Naruto. Mystigan looked at Naruto. You should come back with me, I'm a part of a guild that might be able to help you out, or at least shield you from harm. This world can be a very dangerous place, and I can tell you have no magic. Naruto turned around and took off his mask. He revealed his toad-like eyes. I'm a pretty dangerous person myself, and I've been here long enough to know how to avoid detection. Even now when I'm standing in front of you, you can't even sense me. It's almost like I'm not here, is it? Mystigan's eyes widened. So, this is his doing, but he's so young. He couldn't be any older than 16. Why don't you tell me more about your world? Maybe I could help you out, replied Mystigan. I know how it feels to be all alone in this world. I'm not alone, right, Kurama? Naruto smirked as he heard Kurama snicker. What's your name? Mystigan, replied Mystigan. Naruto suddenly disappeared and appeared next to Mystigan. Hold on. Mystigan's eyes widened at his speed. He's fast. Mystigan prepared himself for an attack, but suddenly he felt Naruto grab him. In what looked like a blur, him and Naruto were standing on the other side of the clearing. Then suddenly an enormous explosion lit the dark sky. What was that? I don't know, replied Naruto as he looked around. Then his eyes fell on a lone tree. Didn't anyone ever teach you it's rude to spy on people? Mystigan watched in shock as a tall buff man stepped out of tree. You're truly impressive, just as Master Hades suggested. Naruto frowned. I've never heard of such a guy. How does he know about me? And what do you want? We know of your presence, boy. You hold a lot of power, but you do an excellent job concealing it. Even though I can't even sense you standing in front of me. Yet you managed to sniff me out, replied the man. Mystigan stepped forward. Who are you, and what do you want? I guess I have been quite rude. My name's Azuma, one of the 7 kin of Purgatory under the Dark Guild Grimoire, replied Azuma. Mystigan's eyes widened. What? You're from Grimoire? Naruto frowned at Mystigan's reaction. So, this is a Dark Guild, and what's Grimoire? It's most likely a bigger one of the Dark Guilds. Be careful, Kit, he possesses high amount of power. Naruto looked forward. We'll see. Azuma stepped forward. Master Hades has seeked you out, boy. He wishes you to join our guild and become a member of the 7 kin. Naruto frowned. Why me? Why not Mystigan here? He seems like a powerful guy. For one, he's a fairy tale wizard, so he is most likely to decline, and second, my master has taken interest in you. He has sensed your magic power and wished you to serve for him, replied Azuma. Mystigan gulped. If this guy agrees to join them, then I'll be eliminated. And if I was to decline? Asked Naruto. I really never took interest in these things called guilds. I'm quite the wild free spirit. I enjoy roaming this magical land. So you decline? Very well then, I will be taking you by force, replied Azuma. Naruto got into a stance. Stay out of my way, I can tell this guy is out of your league. Mystigan grunted. Don't get arrogant, kid, I'm an S-rank mage. I can handle him. Naruto chuckled. Good, then I won't have to worry about you getting hurt. Azuma suddenly launched forward, and Naruto and Mystigan did the same. Line. Azuma stepped forward. Master Hades has seeked you out, boy. He wishes you to join our guild, and become a member of the Seven Kin. Naruto frowned. Why me? Why not Mystigan here? He seems like a powerful guy. For one, he's a fairy tale wizard, so he is most likely to decline, and second, my master has taken interest in you. He has sensed your magic power, and wishes for you to serve for him, replied Azuma. Mystigan gulped. If this guy agrees to join them, then I'll be eliminated. And if I was to decline? Asked Naruto. I really never took interest in these things called guilds. I'm quite the wild free spirit. I enjoy roaming this magical land. So you decline? Very well then, I will be taking you by force, replied Azuma. Naruto got into a stance. Stay out of my way, I can tell this guy is out of your league. Mystigan grunted. Don't get arrogant, kid, I'm an S-rank mage. I can handle him. Naruto chuckled. Good, then I won't have to worry about you getting hurt. Azuma suddenly launched forward, and Naruto and Mystigan did the same. Line. Mystigan and Naruto moved quickly, and they both respectfully pulled out their weapons of choice. Naruto pulled out a kunai, and Mystigan pulled out one of his magic staves. Though before they could get closer to Azuma, Azuma extended his arms forward and muttered a word. Bleave. Naruto's and Mystigan's eyes widened as they watched a bright red light erupt from Azuma's hands. Almost simultaneously, Azuma and Naruto flashed through their own series of hand seals. Then both of them were gone from the area. Naruto's shun shined onto a tree not too far away, and an alien mist shimmered near an opening until Mystigan appeared. Azuma smirked. He slowly closed his fists and opened his mouth to talk. You guys are better than I thought. To have avoided that at point blank. Naruto eyed Azuma. So he uses some type of explosion magic? Naruto glanced at the destruction his spell had left. Magic in this world is practically limitless. His magic reminds me of Deidara's explosive release. What else can he use? Mokuton? Naruto's body tensed as he watched a magic circle appear at Azuma's hands. Tree fist. Naruto watched as the tree next to him formed into a giant fist. Naruto's instinct was to jump away, but looking down to his feet, he was shocked to see himself attached to the tree. Shit. Then all at once the tree fist slammed into him, and it sent him flying deep into the forest. Mystigan watched as the blonde ninja was sent flying into the forest. He slammed his magic staves into the ground, and began to apply his magic. Skyscraper. Azuma turned his head to face Mystigan, and a magic circle appeared at his hand. I'll take care of you next, fairy tale scum. Mystigan remained completely composed. Not a single hint of emotion from his voice. We'll see about that. Azuma was about to move forward, when he suddenly felt himself thrown into the air. He placed his arms in front of his face in an attempt to see past the gushing air. He suddenly felt himself slow down, and he instantly looked down. His eyes widened in shock at how high in the sky he was. Then out of nowhere a hole erupted in the sky. Azuma watched as a demon-like creature appeared. The demon lashed out, and grabbed Azuma with both hands. For a moment a flicker of fear appeared on Azuma's face, but it quickly faded. It was soon replaced with an unamused posture. This is boring. The air around him suddenly distorted, and Azuma appeared harmless on the ground. Azuma looked at Mystigan with annoyance. On his face, is that all an S-rank from Fairy Tail can do? Mystigan gave Azuma an impassive face, and replied with his next spell. 5-layered magic circle, sacred song. Azuma watched as 5 magic circles suddenly appeared above. Azuma attempted to move out of the way, but he was soon to find out that the spell kept him captive with a rune. Azuma let out a grin. It looks like this match might be some fun. Tower burst. Mystigan watched as a magic circle appeared at his feet, and he looked up at Azuma, whose arms were both extended out. But when did he cast the spell? Mystigan suddenly recalled the moment before he caught Azuma under the illusion. So that magic circle from earlier, he used that moment to set this. 2 astronomical explosions lit the sky night. Line. Naruto was perched on a tree. His toad-like eyes stared down at the battlefield, much like a predator stalking its prey. Then for a moment he closed his eyes, and two blinding lights lit his face. Only when the two lights faded did he reopen his eyes. Looking down, he let out a sigh. It's a shame my clone got destroyed so easily. Now it looks like I'll have to go down myself. The wind suddenly began to blow, and in a current it carried a small bundle of leaves. For a moment those leaves floated in the air aimlessly, and then they slowly began to make its way toward Naruto. The leaves circled around him, much like how the earth would rotate around the sun. Gradually more and more leaves began to encircle Naruto until he no longer was visible. Then all at once the leaves blew out in all directions, and Naruto was no longer on the tree line. Mystigan lay on his stomach, and his head was buried into the ground. His clothes were burned up, and the smell of burning flesh filled the night. Slowly lifting his head, he inhaled a bunch of air at once. Mystigan suddenly began to cough, and once again his head dropped to the ground. For a moment Mystigan just laid there, feeling the excruciating pain in every single cell of his body. Mystigan suddenly clawed at the ground, and made a grunting noise. Pushing himself with his arms, he slowly got to his knees. Taking a couple long breaths, he pushed his body even further and got to his feet. Looking up, he was surprised to see a tarnished crater of dirt in front of him. Mystigan stared at the small circle of destruction. I got him? The spell wasn't even complete. You can still move? I'll admit it, you fairy tale mages are pretty tough. Mystigan's eyes visibly shook, and he slowly cranked his head towards his backside. Not too far behind him stood Azuma, looking completely unscratched. Mystigan quickly turned around, and he fell onto his bottom. Looking up, he slowly began to back away. I'm not match for this man. I whose body possesses no magic can't compete with his power. I've only been S rank for a few months. For a moment Mystigan began to believe the near was end, yet he felt no fear. Mystigan looked Azuma into the eyes as awaiting for death to appear behind him, and take him out. Then to his surprise a shadow appeared behind Azuma. Azuma didn't manage to turn around in time, and an open palm slammed into his back. Azuma coughed out blood as he felt pain explode through his spine. He was quickly lifted off his feet, and sent flying over Mystigan. Mystigan watched as the same blonde stood in front of him. Naruto grabbed Mystigan, and looked him in the eye. We need to get you out of here, you won't last another minute. Mystigan looked up at the blonde stranger. Confusion were visible in his eyes. Why is he helping me? Without a word, Naruto grabbed Mystigan and tossed him over his shoulder. Looking back at Azuma, he watched as he was already picking himself up. Did Frog Q might even hurt him? Naruto was about to jump forward onto a tree, when he thought otherwise. It would be unwise for me to use the trees to travel. Naruto looked back, and watched Azuma dust himself off. Naruto looked at Mystigan on his shoulder, and back at Azuma. Damn, I can't let this guy die. He might be the only person capable of sending me home. Kurama? Let's end this with one move. The nine tails stirred inside of Naruto. You've refused to use my power for the past month, and now you want to use it to fire a tailed beast bomb? What happened to staying undetected? Destroying a mountain won't really help you out. Naruto sneered. Come on, Kurama, I know you're dying to fight too. Mystigan looked at Naruto with utter confusion and worry. Is this guy talking to himself? Then all at once he watched as the blonde exploded into a bright yellow light. He felt the power radiate off him, and realized that he was engulfed by a red cloak of magic. Naruto lifted his arm, and began to form a dark orb of magic. Mystigan watched with much interest as the ball grew at the size of a large rock, and all at once it shrunk to the size of a soccer ball. Then to his shock the ground cracked underneath Naruto's feet. Mystigan stared at Naruto in horror. What is that? Azuma, who had been standing far away, looked at the black ball with interest. What is that? He then looked at the distance between him and Naruto, and he stood his ground. There should be enough space for me to react, whatever it is. I'll be ready. You like explosions? Allow me to show you my Baijadama! The ball suddenly cracked, and a white light suddenly shone through the crack. Then once again the night was lit by an enormous light. Except this time the light was seen in a faraway town known as Magnolia, where rumors of a dragon's roar destroying a mountain would come to be created. Line. Mystigan's eyes suddenly flickered to light. His eyes fell upon a small campfire. He stared at light for a long time until he realized he was actually awake. He tried to stand up, but to his shock he was tied to the trunk of a tree. His arms were tied expertly together, and it would be extremely difficult for even him to attempt to break free. Mistigan looked around the small campfire, and was surprised to see the blonde from earlier, except this time he had removed his mask. Mistigan was quite shocked to see such a young man. The kid was probably no older than himself. 16 was Mistigan's guess. His eyes were drawn to the whisker marks on his cheeks. For some reason they reminded him of Natsu's cat Happy. Mistigan watched the boy sleep so innocently, but then realization came to him. That spell earlier, what exactly had happened? All he could remember was a bright white light, and everything went black. For a moment he felt a surge of panic. He was completely defenseless at the hands of a boy with unimaginable power. Wherever he was from, it wasn't good at all. Mistigan pondered for a moment, when he suddenly remembered the hidden knife in his boot. He moved his shoe to one of his hands. His hands clamped around all over his sole, feeling for the removable flap in his sole. Mistigan felt himself a bit relieved when he finally found the gap. Opening the flap, his world suddenly turned upside down as he didn't find the hidden blade. Clunk! Mistigan slowly turned his head up. He then stared at a small blade that reflected the campfire's light. The blade was embedded in the tree trunk a few inches over his head. I see you're awake. Don't you think of escaping until you've answered a couple more of my questions. Mistigan remained silent for a moment, and then he answered. What do you want to know? I want to know everything, about this world, about yours, and that dimension portal thingy of yours, responded Naruto. Mistigan looked at Naruto with uncertainty. And if I refuse? Then I won't tell you about my past, and I'll just have to do this the hard way, bluffed Naruto. I'll just force my way into your mind, and kill you in the process. Mistigan's eyes widened in fear. There's no way he could do that, right? Mistigan gritted his teeth, and looked at the ground. I can't afford to die here, not yet. Fine, but I ain't telling you any secrets of fairy tale, replied Mistigan. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. Loyal to this so-called guild of yours? Naruto gave Mistigan a reassuring smile. I guess I got to give you some respect for your loyalty. Mistigan took a deep breath. I guess we should start with the year as X782. Line. Mistigan and Naruto both stood at the top of a cliff that oversaw all the mountain ranges. Mistigan's eyes widened in utter shock as he looked at the scorched earth in front of him. About a kilometer in the distance a large crater stood. Mistigan's jaw dropped as he recalled. The small mountain range that was one of the smaller mountains in the long chain mountain ranges, but still. He then turned his head to Naruto, who was grinning at his work. Quite the damage, huh? Mistigan sighed. He was used to the damage caused by his guild, but this was on a whole different level. To be able to level a whole mountain, that was beyond the power of a human. Yet this boy, he had done exactly that. No, the beast that resides inside of him is the cause of all this damage. Still, to think that his boy had tamed this beast was still a scary thought in Mistigan's head. So, what will you do now? Naruto looked at the destruction, and then turned his head towards Mistigan. I'm going to keep going through these dark guilds. Magic is limitless. Somewhere there must be a dark mage who has what I want. Mistigan remained silent for a moment, then he asked. Why a dark guild? 'Cause why would a legal guild would want anything with dimension travel? It sounds more like something the forces of evil would want to do, replied Naruto. Mistigan nodded, accepting Naruto's answer. What happened to that Azuma guy? I'm not sure, but that bastard managed to survive my attack. I could still feel his life force as I carried you away, replied Naruto. Mistigan sighed, and then looked up at the sky. Should I ask him to go back with me to Fairy Tail? I'm not going to join your guild, Fairy Tail. Mistigan remained emotionless on the outside, but he was shocked to the core. This boy had yet again managed to guess what he was thinking. Why not? I've heard of your guild. It's a very popular one, and if I'm correct, the second most powerful guild in all of Fiori. Naruto finally stopped looking at the damage in the distance, and turned around. I have no intention of bringing any attention to myself. As well, I have no intention of staying in this world. I must return home because I have many things to finish. Mistigan let out a small smile from underneath his mask, and let out a rare chuckle. What about Kitsune? You've only been here a few months, and you're already one of the most wanted criminals in Fiori. Naruto smirked. Kitsune might be popular, but not Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto began to walk away, and lifted his hand. I'll see you around, Jelal. Mystigan sighed. He had told him several times not to call him that, but the boy wouldn't listen. I'll see you around, Kitsune. Mystigan watched as Naruto began to walk away, and his eyes suddenly lit up. He raced toward Naruto at a quick jog. Reaching Naruto, he grabbed his shoulder and spun him around. Naruto looked at Mystigan with a bit of confusion. What is it, Jelal? Naruto. I know you're determined to get home, but if you ever find it that you can't. Mystigan paused for a moment. He had only known this kid for a while, but he could see the fierce determination in his eyes. For some reason, Mystigan believed that this kid might actually make it home, but Mystigan was not naive. He at least wanted to make sure the kid had a backup plan. Up north, there's a guild not too far away from Worthwoodsea. The one I told you about, Kate's Shelter. Naruto paused for a moment, recalling Jelal's story of the very first time he came to Earthland. Then quickly he remembered about the story of the little blue-haired girl and the fake guild. Kate's Shelter? Wasn't that the guild with that little girl and the dead old man ghost? Mystigan nodded. If you ever need somewhere to go, I'm sure Rabal might consider taking you in. Just tell him W. Hose sent you. Naruto shook his head. I doubt I will need it, Jelal, but thanks anyways. Naruto was about to turn around, when Mystigan's iron grip denied him to turn. One more thing, Naruto. If you do go to Kate's Shelter, promise me 2 things. 2 things? Asked Naruto, a bit confused. Mystigan nodded. If you do go, don't tell Wendy anything about me. Wendy? Yes, the little girl I took there. Mystigan looked Naruto in the eye. Second, please look after her, that's all. Naruto gave Mystigan a weird look. He had assumed that Mystigan wasn't particularly close to anyone, but for some reason this little girl had won his heart. Naruto didn't see any harm in making this promise. He wasn't planning to stick around long enough anyways. Sure, I promise you. Mystigan nodded. Thanks. Mystigan let go of Naruto, and he began to walk back up the cliff. Naruto watched Mystigan hike up the cliff for a moment, before turning around and walking down the cliff. Mystigan's words rang through Naruto's head, and seeds of doubt began to grow in Naruto's heart. Kurama? We're going to get back home, right? I don't know, Kit, I don't know, replied Kurama as he peered through Naruto's mind's line. Naruto sat on the edge of a cliff. He was dressed in long red cloak with a hood. The cloak had black flames running down the back. It reminded Naruto of his old Toad Sage cloak, but that thing was long gone. Naruto wore the same kitsune mask had chosen to wear when he came to Earthland. Currently he was enjoying a small snack as he stared at a battle in front of him. Some sibling trio were fighting an enormous beast that had been terrorizing some town. Naruto would have usually just moved along, but the magic these sibling posses amazed Naruto. He had heard of takeover magic, but this had been the first time he had seen it in action. The ability to completely suppress the power of an entity, and use its power. For a moment it disgusted Naruto, but then he realized he had done the same to Kurama. Naruto heard Kurama sneer at him. Naruto just sighed, and he took a bite out of his apple. How the hell can you even eat through your mask? Naruto shrugged his shoulders. Kakashi taught me. Oh really? I don't recall that. Naruto smirked. Of course not, it was around the time Orochimaru suppressed you with the 5 elemental pronged seal. Naruto could hear Kurama growl at the name of the snake bastard, but Naruto ignored him. Looking down at the battlefield, he was shocked to see that the male of the group had managed to take over the beast. Impressive. Naruto was about to take another bite from his apple, when he noticed he had reached the very core. He looked down at the finished piece of fruit, and tossed it over the cliff. He stood up and was about to walk away. I was hoping to see more of their takeover magic. Why are you so interested in their power? That takeover magic could be useful. There are many beasts around here and I don't plan on revealing your full power, Kurama. I think it would be best if I left you as my trump card. That's good. I'm glad I won't have to wag my tail every time you need help. Naruto nodded. Of course, Kurama. That's why I was planning on finding an animal or monster to use as a summon. I can no longer summon toads, so I need to find another animal. Hopefully one with I will not only have someone to help me travel, but a partner in crime in case things go down. I see, so you were planning on using the basics of this takeover magic to force an animal to help you out. You've changed, Naruto. Naruto looked at the ground with a glint of sadness in his eyes. Yeah. I guess I have. Naruto, I know you want to go home, but don't allow that need to become into despair. I know, Kurama, I'll be careful. Kurama watched as the sewer suddenly became a bit more disgusting. Trying to lighten the mood, he took a jab at Naruto. Not to mention you've become a bit less stupid. It's a nice change. What the hell, Kurama? I'm not stupid and I've never been, shouted Naruto out loud. Naruto quickly realized that he had been spying on this sibling trio, and he may have very well given himself away. Naruto growled at Kurama silently as he turned to look at sibling trio. What he saw shocked him to the very core. The boys. No, the beast's large hand was raised and coming down on the youngest of the group. Then she was sent sailing through the air. In the blink of an eye, Naruto was gone. In an instant he managed to catch the girl mid-air and use himself to cushion her fall. They both slammed into a giant boulder, and their impact managed to split in half. Naruto groaned as he felt pain shoot through his back. He sat on the ground with girl in his hands. She had silver-white hair that reached to her neck. The girl was rather pale, and she wore a short red dress with a white collar. Her hair color greatly reminded Naruto of Kakashi. Lisana. Naruto looked up and saw the other girl of the group. She donned a dark and skimpy sleeveless shirt that didn't cover her stomach. She wore short black shorts with a white leather belt. Lastly, she wore thigh-high black boots. Just like the girl in Naruto's arms. This girl had silver white hair, but hers was tied into a ponytail with a dark ribbon. In short, she looked like some gothic girl in Naruto's eyes. The girl raced to Naruto and looked at her sister in shock. Lisana? Is she alright? Naruto looked down at the girl and felt her pulse. He then uttered a few words. She's breathing, but she's wounded. Let me see her. The girl motioned for Naruto to hand her over, but Naruto shook his head. I'll heal her, just stand back. What? Asked the girl. She gave Naruto a confused, but terrified face. Naruto knew that the terror came from the sheer fact that her sister might die. Who are you? Naruto put the girl down in front of him, and placed his palm over her chest. He was about to start his medical jutsu, when the white-haired girl grabbed his wrist. What the hell do you think you're doing? Naruto looked up, and gave her an annoyed look. I'm healing her. Yeah, right. I bet you were going to grope her. Naruto gritted his teeth, and stared at the gothic girl with anger. Then his eyes widened in alarm. He grabbed Lisana, and slammed himself into the gothic girl. He knocked them both out of the way of the beast's rampage. Naruto then placed his hand on the gothic teen, and he shined themselves 100 yards away. Naruto watched with much interest as the beast destroyed the boulder in one punch. What strength! Muttered Naruto as he reached under his cloak. Tied under his cloak was a black-handled katana, and its sheath was tied firmly to his waist, and he quickly pulled out the katana. He slowly stood straight up, and held the katana to his side. I'll make this quick. Naruto was about to rush forward, when he felt a hand grasp onto his wrist. Looking to his side, he looked into the deep blue eyes of the gothic girl. For a moment Naruto forgot all about her gothic appearance, and was paralyzed by the look in her eyes. Fear. Despair. All hope vanished. Naruto's eyes shook slightly, and he began to imagine himself with those eyes. It can't be. Please! Don't kill him! Shouted the girl. Her shouts broke Naruto of his trance, and brought him back to reality. Naruto acknowledged the girl, and he turned his head back to the beast. Naruto watched as the beast had finally caught a glance of them, and now was heading full steam for them. Why not? Why not? Repeated the girl, with terror in her voice. Then she asked Naruto, why would you have to kill another human being in the first place? He's no longer human, the beast has completely taken over his conscience, replied Naruto coldly, having remembering what he once told Killer Bee during his Nine Tails training. If he ever reached the point of no return, to slaughter him on the spot. Mary Jane tightened her grip on Naruto's wrist, and glared at Naruto. He can still be saved. I swear if you kill my brother, I'll make you regret you were ever born. I swear on my name, Mary Jane Strauss. Naruto slapped her hand away, and he sneered. You wouldn't be the first to swear to kill me. For a moment Mary Jane was baffled. She hadn't expected that type of response, nor did she exactly mean to threaten his life. Just beat him into a bloody pulp. Before she had the opportunity to correct herself, she watched as he formed an odd hand seal. Then all at once 2 exact copies of him came to life. "Disable the beast," spoke Naruto as he slammed his katana into the ground. Naruto then reached under his cloak and pulled out a square piece of paper. He then kneeled down and placed the piece of paper flat onto the ground. He then pulled his hand to his mouth and bit down hard onto his thumb. Blood oozed out of his bite, and he then began to write on the paper. Mary Jane looked at Naruto with confusion. "Why did you bite your thumb? What are you writing?" Naruto was quick at work, and then he muttered something. "I think you call them runes." While Naruto created the seal, the 2 clones rushed forward and attacked the beast with their katanas. They moved quickly and began to cut the beast up. They aimed for muscles in an attempt to stop its movement. The beast moved quickly and managed to land its fist on the clone. The clone poofed out of existence. The other clone used the other clone's smoke as smokescreen and shined behind the beast in a series of quick slices and managed to cut up the beast's calves. For a moment the beast faltered and fell onto its knees. Naruto looked up for a split second and simultaneously finished his seal. Naruto formed a hand seal, and the seal on the paper began to shift. Conscious suppression seal. Naruto picked up the piece of paper and rushed at the beast. In a split second Naruto slapped the piece of paper onto the beast's forehead. Almost instantaneously the beast began to scream, until its voice became nothing but a faded echo lost in the depths of the night. Naruto watched as the beast suddenly began to change form, and a white light momentarily engulfed its body. The moment the light disappeared, Naruto was staring at a tan young man. Naruto assumed that the boy was around his age. He was quite muscular for his age, and was probably taller than Naruto. His shirt was gone, revealing the tension in his muscles. Naruto peered down at the boy with interest. "As I thought, this takeover magic, when not properly controlled, places a great strain on the body, similar to an imperfect Jinchuriki cloak. What did you do?" Naruto's eyes opened a little bit. Then he replied to Kurama. "It's a seal I got from the pervy sage. It's similar to the chakra suppression seal, but this seal suppresses the conscious of anyone or anything." Naruto looked down at boy, and gave his bowl haircut a long look. "Lee!" Kurama broke Naruto of his trance, as his loud and deep voice spoke. Your seals have gotten better. But you're nowhere near the level of your dear Yondaime Hokage, or your clan. I know that, compared to them I'm nothing." Naruto stopped talking to Kurama, and gritted his teeth. "And can you stop referring to my father as your dear Yondaime Hokage?" Kurama gave Naruto a stale laugh, causing Naruto to glare at the ground. He was about to shout at Kurama, when Marajane's voice pierced the air. "Lisana!" Naruto whipped his head around, and turned to face Marajane. His eyes widened in shock as he stared at the kneeled Gothic girl. Right in front of Marajane was Lisana, who was giving off a white glow. Naruto's eyes moved to Marajane, and watched as the white light began to slowly engulf her too. "An anima? Here?" Naruto crossed the distance between him and Marajane. He grabbed Marajane and pulled her away. Carrying her in her arms, he jumped away and managed to pull her away from the anima. "Let me go!" shouted Marajane as tears strolled down her face. Naruto didn't reply, and continued to fall back to Marajane's brother body. Marajane watched as her youngest sibling's body glowed brighter and brighter. In a moment of panic she bit down on Naruto's hand. "Let me go!" she mumbled as she bit down on Naruto's hand. She had expected Naruto to let go of her, but all she ended up doing was choking on Naruto's blood. Not realizing what had happened, she coughed out the blood. Ignoring the inappropriate action, she looked back at her sister's body. "Please, I'm begging you, don't let my sister die." Naruto bit down his own lip, as he restrained himself from actually letting her go. "This is beyond my control, I'm sorry, but you would only disappear too." Marajane ignored Naruto's logical response, and thrashed around in his arms. Naruto tightened his grip on her, and disallowed her from breaking free. Then, to Marajane's horror, she watched as her sister's body flicker until darkness consumed the Lisana. "Lisana!" Line. Naruto sat in front of a small campfire. His mask was still on, but his bright blue eyes glowed through the eye holes. Naruto watched the flames dance with a plain look on his face, and suddenly he remembered the screams of the girl he had saved. He closed his eyes, trying to forget the ghastly sound. He then reopened his eyes and looked to his left. laying in a makeshift bed, was the same very girl he had saved. He watched as the girl slept in remorse, probably dreaming about the unfortunate departure of her youngest sister. Naruto then turned his head to his sibling, and couldn't help but pity the boy. He would have to live believing he was the reason of the death of his acquaintance. Naruto brought up his hand, and lightly knocked it against his mask. I should have inferred earlier. I just never imagined a damn anime opening at a time like this. Naruto's thoughts traveled back to the thought of an enigmatic friend of his. Not to mention this anime was too small for even Jalal to detect. Naruto picked himself up, and stood on his feet. He sighed a few hand seals, and he watched as the earth engulfed the flames. Naruto stared at the rubble of dirt, and took a deep breath. Medical jutsu, earth release, seals, that's everything I've managed to learn from Kurama in these past couple of months, but what's the point? I'm no closer to getting home. Naruto stared at the pile of dirt with a sense of depression, and then he shook his head. If you start questioning your own results, then you'll never achieve your goal. Naruto was about to walk away, when he felt a hand clamp onto his wrist. Naruto turned his head slowly around, and looked into the blue eyes of Mary Jane. So, you're awake! In a quick moment Naruto was engulfed in a hug. Naruto was caught aback, and in result took a step back. He looked down at the girl in his arms, and suddenly felt a damp spot on his shoulder. Why did she have to die? Naruto didn't respond as he failed to find words to respond with. Naruto watched as the girl moved awkwardly in his. Suddenly he watched as the girl pushed him back, and began to slam her fists into his chest. Why? Why didn't you let me save her? Naruto felt her pain echo through his body, as her fist slammed against his chest. Why? Naruto just stayed silent as her attack began to lessen, and she fell to her knees without a sign of life. When something you know and love is harshly taken away from you, all you can think of about is anger, hatred, and even revenge. It's only logical, it's what makes us humans. Mary Jane's eyes widened at Naruto's sudden speech, and she looked up at Naruto. Naruto's sky-blue eyes met Mary Jane's navy-blue eyes. If you allow your hatred to consume you, all you will be doing is tarnishing the memory of the ones you hold close. If you must hate someone, then hate me. Naruto turned around, and began to walk away. For a moment Mary Jane stood paralyzed, but watching Naruto walk away broke her from her daze. Mary Jane moved forward, and called out for him. Who are you? Mary Jane extended her arm reaching for his shoulder, when suddenly she watched him disappear. Mary Jane stood there stunned, and then looked around. Looking up a tall tree, she watched the same hooded stranger stand on top of the peak of a giant tree. The wind suddenly blew, and swarm leaves began to surround Naruto. She watched as the wind unintentionally blew off his hood, revealing his spiky blonde hair. The leaves surrounded Naruto from all angles. Then all at once the leaves blew in all directions, and Naruto was gone. Mary Jane fell to her knees, and she stared at the ground with no emotion. Then all at once she broke down and cried. Line X783. A blade sank into the throat of a dark-haired mage. The man's blood sprayed across. The blade was yanked out of the man's throat, and a foot stepped over the dead man's body. It revealed a man in a full-body red cloak with a hood. The man wore a mask that resembled the face of a fox. The man walked across the room, where bodies lied all over the place. All of them were still alive except the man that had been brutally killed. The fox-masked man reached the door, and walked outside. Closing the door behind him, he took a deep sigh. His eyes shone dully through the mask's eye holes. Naruto took off his hood, and ran his hand through his long, untamed hair. His body slumped against the door, revealing the remorse he felt. 1 year. 25 dark guilds, 39 people dead, no leads of Tartarus, oration cease, or grimoire. Best of all, no leads back home. Naruto felt his body tense, and he slowly slid to his bottom. What's the point of going home? Giving up? Naruto gritted his teeth, as he heard Kurama's voice roar through his head. No. Then why are you complaining? Stop this pitiful state you're in and grow up. Naruto slowly extended his hand, and slammed it into the door. 39 people dead, 39! Going home isn't worth the life of 39 people. Kurama grunted. You're still so naive, Naruto. All those people you killed gave you no choice. Not to mention they were all A-rank felines and higher. Naruto sighed, as he looked up at the moon. Still, killing people isn't justifiable, but I am shinobi. That's what I've been taught to do, yet I still feel all this remorse. You can feel remorse later, after we get back home, roared Kurama in an impatient tone. Naruto rose an eyebrow as he was caught off guard by Kurama's impatient tone. Why are you trying to rush things? You've been so laid back about things, why the sudden change? Kurama remained quiet for a moment before uttering. It's nothing. Naruto, who had been sitting down, slammed into his face. He quickly stood up and roared out loud. What do you mean it's nothing? Don't turn into a human girl. I dare you, call me a human girl one more time. Naruto face-palmed and took a deep breath. What's going on? My conscience is starting to fade away. Naruto's eyes widened in alarm. What do you mean your conscience is starting to fade away? Naruto. For a moment a rare show of sadness appeared across Kurama's face. His mouth moved with much agony. You and I aren't from this world. Especially me, my conscience is slowly returning back to our world. It's only a matter of days before I disappear. Naruto's eyes widened in shock. His knees buckled in fear, and all at once they gave out. His knees slammed into the dirt. He then brought his hands over his head and cradled his head into the dirt. Then you're leaving me? For a moment Naruto paused, and a crude thought raised across his head. I'm going to die, right? Yes and no. Naruto's eyes lit up a bit. What do you mean? If you leave my body I will die. Kurama in Naruto's inner world shook his head. My conscience is leaving, not my chakra. You will still have access to my chakra, and maybe even Bijou mode, yet at the same time my subconscious won't. Naruto ever so lifted his head from the ground, and stared at the night sky. How can you be so sure? Lately I've been having dreams, where I begun to sense our world. And I've sensed the culmination of my body. It won't be too long when I'll be revived once again. Naruto's eyes widened at the quick realization. Wait, you can sense our world? Why haven't you told me this? Is everyone alright? Kurama shrugged his shoulders. I'm assuming they are, since I don't sense the 10 tails no more. Naruto bit his lip, as he impatiently waited for Kurama to answer his other question. Naruto pounded his fist into the ground. How long? Asked Naruto in a demanding tone. Kurama growled a bit at Naruto's tone, but he answered. 4 weeks. 4 damn weeks. Shouted Naruto, anger clearly in his voice. You're supposed to disappear in a few days, and you only tell me now? Naruto. Then out of all the un-Naruto-ish things to do, Naruto fell to the ground and cried. Naruto placed his hand over his heart, and felt the despair finally engulf him. What did I ever to deserve this? Not only have I lost all my friends, but now, you too, Kurama? Kurama stayed silent. He had been with Naruto this past year. He had seen how tormented his Jinchuriki had been, yet he hadn't known it had been this much. Kit, maybe once I get back, there could be a possibility that someone from our world can bring you back. Naruto stopped sobbing and shook his head. I don't know, let's just go, Kurama. Fine, let us go. Line. Naruto was perched in a tree. His back rested against the tree's giant trunk as he slept. A snore would escape Naruto's mouth every now and then. All at once a bright line shined against Naruto's face, announcing the break of dawn. Naruto's eyes opened slowly, and he stared into the sun's rays. He quickly shut his eyes as the rays made his eyes sting. Naruto looked around, and then quickly jumped to the ground. Once he hit the ground, he unconsciously called for Kurama. Kurama? No response. Naruto's dropped as he remembered what had happened. Just like Kurama had said, his chakra was still sealed into Naruto, but Kurama's subconscious had all but disappeared. Naruto's eyes dropped to the ground, as a sense of depression rolled over him. Naruto reached under his cloak, and pulled out his kitsune mask. He took a deep breath, and walked over to a smothered fire. He quickly rekindled the flames, and soon enough he had a roaring fire. He stared at the flame for a moment, and Naruto could have sworn that he saw Konoha's entrance in the flame. Without even realizing, he reached out to grab it, and accidentally burned his hand. Naruto stared at his hand, and slowly brought it to his mouth. He sucked on his burnt finger for a moment, and then he stopped. He took his burned hand, and reached for his mask. Then without even hesitating he threw the mask into the fire. He then grabbed his cloak, and threw it in too. Naruto watched as the two items fed the fire its fuel. The two things that had kept Naruto from properly setting himself into this world was gone. No longer would he dance around as Kitsune, but as Naruto Uzumaki. If he was going to live in this world, he needed to find a real purpose, or until Kurama found a way to bring him back home. Looking up to the sky, Naruto pondered on what to do. He had traveled through almost all of Fiori, but he had yet to find a place that caught his interest. Naruto ruffled his own hair as he thought of a place to go. His long blonde hair nearly covered his eyes, and Naruto frowned. I should cut my hair too. I need to cut all connections to Kitsune. Then all at once he remembered a place Jalal had mentioned. Naruto's eyes fell as he felt a sense of loss. I could always join a guild. Kate shelter? Line. Naruto walked down a dirt road deep into a forest. He wore black shinobi pants with matching sandals. He wore an orange jacket with black stripes around his stomach. On top of the jacket he wore a plain white cape held together by red rope. On top of Naruto's head was a cone-like straw hat that slightly hid his face from view. Naruto continued down the road until he finally turned a corner. Raising his straw hat a bit, he looked into the distance and saw the settlement he was looking for. A white cat-looking house. Naruto took a deep sigh, as he had been hoping that the guild's name wasn't too literal. Naruto's eyes unconsciously narrowed as he stared at the watchtowers behind the guild building. He watched as an Indian-dressed man stared down at him. Naruto just pulled his straw hat and hid his concerned look. It had been just like Jalal said, this place was a place of ghosts. He had seen the man right there, but he couldn't sense anything. No chakra. No magic, not an ounce of negative emotion. Naruto bit down on his lip. Every living person had at least a bit of negativity. It was extremely rare to find a person without it. Naruto continued to leisurely walk down the path, not wanting to give the guards a reason to attack. He finally reached the door of the guild hall and stared up at its odd look. Naruto felt his hand wander to his face and tried to feel his whisker-like birthmarks. Naruto's attention was suddenly brought to the door as it burst wide open. A young girl with long blue hair burst out of the door. She wore a simple dress with 2 orange and blue patterned stripes. At the bottom of the dress it had white pointy edges running across it. She also wore wing-like attachments on her ankles and wrists. Naruto just stood still as the girl slammed into him and fell onto her bottom. Naruto rose an eyebrow and watched as the girl's head slowly rose up. Naruto stared into her brown eyes and unintentionally gave her a hardened gaze. As if trying to figure out the girl, Naruto stretched out his hand and spoke, "Are you alright, Dash?" All at once Naruto's vision went white. Naruto suddenly cringed as he felt claws dig into the side of his face. It wasn't until a moment later that he had realized what had happened. Get of me, stupid cat. Line. The end. Favorite. Follow. And review. Next chapter, The Man Behind the Mask. Naruto continued to leisurely walk down the path, not wanting to give the guards a reason to attack. He finally reached the door of the guild hall and stared up at its odd look. Naruto felt his hand wander to his face and tried to feel his whisker-like birthmarks. Naruto's attention was suddenly brought to the door as it burst wide open. A young girl with long blue hair burst out of the door. She wore a simple dress with 2 orange and blue patterned stripes. At the bottom of the dress it had white pointy edges running across it. She also wore wing-like attachments on her ankles and wrists. Naruto just stood still as the girl slammed into him and fell onto her bottom. Naruto rose an eyebrow and watched as the girl's head slowly rose up. Naruto stared into her brown eyes and unintentionally gave her a hardened gaze. As if trying to figure out the girl, Naruto stretched out his hand and spoke, "Are you alright, Dash?" All at once Naruto's vision went white. Naruto suddenly cringed as he felt claws dig into the side of his face. It wasn't until a moment later that he had realized what had happened. Get of me, stupid cat. Line. A girl with blue hair and brown eyes sat quietly at a table. She wore a simple dress with 2 orange and blue patterned stripes. At the bottom of the dress it had white pointy edges running across it. She also wore wing-like attachments on her ankles, and the table itself was a banged-up girl was completely engrossed by the magazine. An occasional smile would pass on her face with every page. Then all of a sudden a white cat with a pink top and matching skirt walked onto the table. The cat had brown eyes and 2 whiskers on each cheek. The cat walked closer to the girl and intrinsically waved her tail back and forth. A bright pink ribbon was tied on her tail as a bow. The cat walked right in front of the girl and placed her paws on her hips. She gave the girl an unsatisfied look, and then she spoke. Wendy, how many times are you going to read that? The girl who had been so focused on the magazine gave a jump. She unintentionally knocked the magazine off the table and onto the ground. The girl gave the feline a scared look before realizing who it was. Carla. Please don't scare me. Carla gave her an annoyed look. Well, I won't have to if you would pay attention to you want to improve as a mage. This is a skill you need to work on. I know, Carla. The young girl gave the cat a sheepish look. It's just that last month's of Sorcerer's magazine was so good. The cat gave the young girl a sigh and jumped off the table. She landed on the ground and quickly moved her attention on the magazine. Picking it up, she flipped through the pages with a disapproving look. It's just a bunch of gibberish, Wendy. It's just gossip. The young girl shook her head and snatched the magazine from the cat's hands. She started flipping through the pages and quickly found the page she was looking for. Look here, Carla. It's not just gibberish, it also gives important information. Carla rose an eyebrow and started to read the page. Notes, believed to use some sort of speed magic and blades magic. This fact is unknown. He has also taken down 25 different dark guilds and has eliminated several A-rank and even a few S-rank criminals. Carla frowned at the page and looked over at Wendy. Carla watched how intently Wendy waited for her response. Carla looked down at the page and couldn't help but keep frowning. From what Carla could see, this was nothing but a last-ditch effort from the council to capture this individual. She took her eyes off the page and gazed up at Wendy, taking a deep sigh and swallowing. Gee, some pride. She gave Wendy an apologetic look. It seems you were right, Wendy. Not all of this is gibberish. Wendy gave the cat a smile and took the magazine from Carla's hands. I know. This Kitsune guy is pretty interesting. Even though he's wanted by the law, some people believe him to be a hero, taking down so many of those dark guilds. Carla shook her head. That may be so, but that doesn't change the fact that he is a murderer. Wendy looked down at Kitsune's page and frowned. I guess you're right, but I can't help and wonder what type of guy he is. Carla crossed her head and began to think out loud. If I was to take a guess, I would imagine him to be some type of loon with an obsession of sorts. Carla! Don't be so negative. He could be a nice person, replied Wendy as she looked down at the paper. Carla slumped her shoulders in defeat and looked back at the magazine. So, why are you reading it again? Wendy blinked and quickly exchanged looks between the magazine and Carla. Well, the new Sorcerer's Monthly is supposed to be coming out today, and I decided to reread last month's. Carla was about to respond when a small, slim, elderly man walked over to the table. He had a thick white beard complete with sideburns that connected to his eyebrow. On his forehead was a small dot with 2 arched lines surrounding the dot. The old man wore a large headgear with long white feathers with red tips. He had a light cloth tied circling his waist, paired with loose dark pants reaching below his knees and simple shoes, and his chest was bare, with a necklace seemingly made of massive teeth around his neck, hanging over it. The old man gave both the cat and the girl a smile. Hello there, you two. Master Ribal, replied both Wendy and Carla with a small bow. The old man returned the bow and looked over at Wendy. Dear, I just got word that this week's mail delivery has arrived. Ribal watched as a giant smile appeared on Wendy's face, and a small look of disgust on Carla's. Wendy gave the master a small nod and spoke with much excitement. Thank you, Master Ribal. If I may, I'll be taking my leave. Ribal smiled. Of course. Ribal watched as the girl turned around and raced across the room. Carla took a deep sigh and looked over at Ribal. Excuse me, Master. Having excused herself, Carla turned around. She quickly jumped off the table and raced behind Wendy shouting, Wendy! Wait up! Wendy, having been too excited, dashed out of the guild hall and pushed the doors outward. For an instant she felt the hot sun bathe on her skin, but almost as quick she felt a shadow loom over her. She slammed into a tall, slim figure and stumbled backwards. For a moment she was dazed, but the moment she recovered she instinctually looked up. A tall blond man with sky-blue eyes looked down at her. For a moment Wendy looked into the man's eyes. Never having seen eyes as blue as something even more appealing caught her eye. In all her life she had never seen a man with whisker marks on their face. She quickly looked at the man's clothes, and was blinded by the man's orange attire. Though before she could take any more notes of the stranger, she watched as his hand extended towards her. Are you ALRI dash? That's all Wendy managed to hear before the sound of his screaming filled the air. Get off me, stupid cat! Wendy blinked, and watched in slight horror as Carla attacked the stranger. Carla! He wasn't hurting me! Carla, who had her claws dug deep into Naruto's face, loosened her grip. She cocked her head backwards, and looked at Wendy. Then all of a sudden she felt a pair of strong hands tear her of the man's face. Looking back at the man, she stared into the man's annoyed blue eyes. The man took a deep sigh, and gave the cat a passive look. Stupid cat! Carla growled, and crossed her hands. Well, you should look where you're going, stupid man! All of a sudden Carla no longer felt the man's hands, and she felt herself falling downwards. She managed to twist her body, and land on her feet. She rubbed her head slightly, and looked up. She watched as a mixture of surprise and excitement crossed the man's face. Then he abruptly spoke. You're talking! Another talking cat! Carla was about to retaliate, when all of a sudden she felt herself picked off the ground. Looking behind her, she ended up looking at Wendy. Wendy looked down at her, and gave her a sheepish smile. Are you alright, Carla? Carla frowned a bit, but she responded. Yeah, how about you, Wendy? Naruto, who had broken from his surprised state, gave the little girl a calculating look. My apologizes, Wendy? I hadn't expected anyone to burst out of the door. Wendy looked up at the tall man, and all her confidence was drained from her. She looked at the man now, and for some reason could feel an aura of power ooze off him. Wendy's face flushed red, and looked down at the ground. Yo, you don't need to apologize, sir. It was my fault for running out of the guild. Naruto gave the girl a small smile, and then looked at Carla. The look in his eyes had changed, and he gave the cat a small glare. As for you, I don't like you. For some odd reason Carla suddenly felt offended. She did not care for the stranger, but felt a stab of pain from his words. Crossing her arms, she looked away before responding. The feeling's mutual. Wendy looked down at her friend, and felt a sense of panic. Please forgive Carla, she's really a good friend. She's just a bit untrusting since not too many people come to our guild. Wendy paused for a moment before she realized something important. Sir, I'm terribly sorry. You must be here to visit our guild. I'm Wendy Marvel, and this is Carla. We're both members of Kate's shelter. Wendy suddenly felt much more nervous as she began to draw conclusions. Are you here to make a job request? Naruto shook his head. No, and please call me Naruto. Wendy nodded, and she suddenly held Carla tighter. Is there something you need then? A matter of fact, I do. You don't happen to know where the guild master is? I was actually thinking of joining this guild, replied Naruto. Naruto watched as a bunch of emotions ran over the girl's face. Wendy gave Naruto an enormous smile, and her eyes twinkled. Then she asked, Really? You've come to join our guild? Naruto couldn't help but return the infectious smile. Yeah, I was hoping you could take me to your guild master. Wendy nodded, and pointed to the inside of the guild. Follow me. I'll take you to master. Naruto watched as the little girl walked into the guild. Naruto hesitated for a moment before following behind her. Walking into the guild, he was surprised by the small amount of people. Unlike many guilds he had infiltrated, this one didn't even have a bar of sorts. The place was decorated with many native watched as some of the people gave him a curious look. Naruto suddenly stopped walking, and his eyes began to shake a little. That's impossible. They're all illusions. Is there something wrong? Naruto looked over at Wendy, and looked into the young girl's eyes. Naruto could see the sudden distrust he had created by his weird behavior. I'm sorry, Wendy. It's just I've never seen a room with such an interesting style of decoration. Wendy broke into a smile, and took a look around. Yeah, it's pretty nice, isn't it? Before I came here I'd never seen anything like it. Hummed Naruto as he continued to look around the room. He then looked down. Wendy, you're right. Wendy continued to walk, and Naruto followed closely behind. Naruto watched as the feline in Wendy's arms continued to stare at him intently. Naruto chose to pretend not to notice her, and remained unfazed by the feline's burning eyes. Naruto walked without a change of look in his face, but he quickly made note of every inch in the room. He passed a few tables, and there would be an occasional member sitting at table. Naruto forced himself not to tense up, as many of the guild members stared at him. Even though they looked every inch alive, Naruto knew they were all fakes. Naruto nearly bumped into Wendy, but managed to stop inches behind her. In front of Naruto and Wendy sat Rabal. Rabal sat in what looked like a red sofa with a Nervit-style blanket. The sofa was decorated with many designs that Naruto found odd. A small wooden table, that paled in comparison to the sofa, was placed in front of the master. "This is our guild master Rabal," spoke Wendy with nervousness in her voice. She then turned to the guild master and gave him a nervous smile. Rabal, this here is Naruto, and he's come to join our guild." Rabal, who had watched the blonde teen walk in, kept his gaze on him just like a hawk does to its prey. Rabal placed his hand to his beard and looked at Naruto. "Oh really? This youngster has come to join our guild? I must say we haven't had a potential guild member since you, Wendy." Wendy gave a nod. "Yeah, and I really think you should let him join." Naruto looked at the girl with a bit of surprise. He had just met the girl, and she was helping him out. Naruto eyed the girl for a moment, before looking back at the guild master. Naruto watched as his old eyes pierced into his. Just by looking into his eyes, Naruto could see concern and frustration in them. Rabal unconsciously bit his lip and looked at the teen. "Damn, usually I'll be able to send mages that want to join to different guilds, but if I did that here, it would break Wendy's heart." Rabal looked down at the blue-haired girl and could see the anticipation in her eyes. Being the only one in our guild not born into our tribe, she has since longed for a guild member that was similar to her. Rabal then took a look around the room and looked at all the guild members. "Did I not condemn myself to absolute isolation? Yet I am here playing guild master. Rabal closed his eyes and looked up at Naruto. "Speak, boy. You have yet to utter a single word." Naruto looked at the old man and suddenly gave him a sly smile. "It's true. I've come here to join this guild known as Kate Shelter." Naruto paused for a moment before finishing. "That is if you'll allow me to master Rabal." Rabal did not hide his suspicious look, and he popped out of his chair. He walked around the small wooden table and stood firmly in front of the looked up at Naruto and asked, "Why is it that you want to join Kate Shelter? It isn't a very well-known guild, and we don't get many jobs." Wendy paled for a moment as she stared at the guild master in shock. "Is he trying to scare him off? But we do get missions," shyly added Wendy as she peered over her shoulder and looked at Naruto. Naruto missed her glance and gave Rabal a firm look. "That is exactly why I want to join your guild. I have no interest in joining a large guild like Fairy Tail and Phantom Lord. This place is peaceful and quiet, and that's exactly how I like it." Naruto then looked around the guild, and then looked back at Rabal. "As for jobs, I know a few places where I can get some higher-level jobs if need so." Rabal gave Naruto a weary look. "Is that so?" Naruto looked at the man, and nearly bit his lip. The look on his face was the look of a man that was about to reject some girl. Can he get his own missions? And I wonder what he meant by higher-level ones? Pondered Rabal. He then looked at Wendy, and stared at her face for a brief moment. "Even though I don't want to let him in, it's something I must do. If one day I was to disappear, Wendy will be all alone." Rabal looked at Naruto, and took a good look into the man's eyes. Hurt, regret, loss, and pain was all he could see in this young man's eyes. Rabal narrowed his eyes, and then all at once he closed eyes. "Maybe, just maybe he might be the one to take young Wendy off my hands. But in order for me to make that judgment, I must first watch him, carefully." Then out of nowhere the man's face took a 180. A large smile was plastered on the man's face. "All right then, I've decided. Naruto Uzumaki, commencing today you are now part of our humble guild Kate Shelter." Naruto looked at the man with a bit of surprise, but then he let out a smile of relief. "It looks like I won't have to expose my relationship with Jalal after all." Naruto watched as the old man pulled out an old wooden stamp out of nowhere. Naruto rose an eyebrow. Summoning? Sealing? Then all of a sudden he felt someone clamp onto his leg. Yes. Naruto looked down at his feet, and he looked down at Wendy. For a moment Naruto suddenly felt his heart thud with intensity. The look the girl was expressing Naruto was almost enough to bring Naruto to his knees. How long had it been since he had received this kind of affection? He had been on the run for the past year in this unknown world. Then the moment Kurama had left he was all alone, just like an unwanted mutt. He barely knew anyone, and no one cared about him. In this world he was helplessly alone. Yet this girl, a girl he had just met, was showing him the affection he had not had since he met his mother. For a moment Naruto lost his cool, and stuttered like a fool. "UMW Wendy?" Naruto watched as the little girl all of a sudden looked up at Naruto. A large blush ran across her face, and she suddenly backed away. She sheepishly looked at the floor, and apologized to Naruto. "I'm sorry, Naruto. It's just I was excited that you joined our guild." "Well, I'm not," spoke Carla as stood next Wendy. Wendy gave Carla a small plead. "Please be nicer, Carla." Carla puffed her chest, and crossed her arms. Rabal, who watched the whole exchange, gave a heart laugh. "So, where do you want your guild mark?" Naruto blinked for a moment, unsure of where to put it. Then suddenly he knew where to put it. He extended his arm out, and showed his palm to Rabal. "I would like the mark on my palm." Rabal nodded, and he placed the stamp onto his palm. "We only have the color blue." "That's fine." Rabal took off the guild stamp, and a guild mark shined on Naruto's palm. Naruto brought his palm to his face. He looked at the guild stamp, and then he looked back at Rabal. Rabal placed stamp on the table, and looked at Wendy. "Now for your sleeping quarters. You'll be staying with Wendy because she is the only person in our guild with an extra room. I hope that won't cause any problems." Naruto nodded his head. "That's fine." "What? Master Rabal, that just can't be!" shouted Carla as she gave the master a shocked look. Rabal raised an eyebrow. "Why not, Carla?" Wendy remained quiet, having been caught off guard by Carla, and Naruto simply awaited her reasoning. Carla cleared her throat. "Wendy is a girl, and this person is a man. I simply don't think a girl as young as Wendy should be living under the same roof as a man." "Carla!" shouted Wendy in absolute embarrassment. Her face flushed red, and she couldn't look Naruto or Rabal in the eye. Naruto and Rabal looked at each other and gave a loud laugh. Naruto couldn't recall the last time he had laughed, but the cat's comment had driven him over the top. **laughter**, are you serious? "Nothing is going to happen, Carla. I swear on my mother's grave," replied Naruto as he wiped a tear from his eye. Rabal simply shook his head. "If something was to happen, Carla, I'll immediately get rid of him. Don't worry about it, Carla." Rabal then looked over to Wendy. "Now, Wendy, since he's your roommate, it'll be your job to show him around. Got it?" Wendy, still red, looked up at Rabal and nodded. "Yes, master." Rabal looked over to Naruto. "Have a look around, and meet some of our other members. There isn't a lot of people to meet, but there are a few interesting characters to meet." Naruto nodded. "I'll do that, sir, master." Naruto then looked over at Wendy. "So should we get going, Wendy?" Wendy nodded. "I'll lead the way. Let's go, Carla." Carla looked away, and simply followed behind Wendy. Line. Naruto, Wendy, and Carla had just entered some large white tent house. Naruto found some difficulty identifying it from the others, since every single other tent was the same. Same cat design, same random language on the entrance, same cone-shaped tent, and same white color. Naruto decided that he would leave some marking on the tent's entrance in order for him to tell the difference. Once inside, Naruto felt a pang of déjà vu in his heart. Naruto looked around, and was honestly surprised by how plain the girl's tent house was. She had a pair of small wooden chairs around some small table in the far corner. In the other corner was a small bed with blue covers and white pillows. Right next to the bed was a small drawer with a few pictures. Above the dresser was a bulletin board with a sign above it saying, "Missions." Naruto cringed a little as he only saw 2 pieces of papers on them. What Naruto assumed to be job requests. Naruto looked to the far left, and saw what he believed to be a door. It was nothing more than a white handmade silk blanket that was etched into the tent as a door. Naruto watched as the blue-haired girl and her cat walked up to the silk blanket. She lifted the blanket to the side, and revealed the inside. This is your place, Mr. Naruto." Naruto looked into the room, and saw that it was completely bare. Not even a chair to sit in. Naruto watched as the young girl looked nervously at him. "How come you're not carrying anything with you?" "I am carrying something with me," replied Naruto as he moved his cape out of the way. He then revealed a scroll, no bigger than Naruto's hand, strapped to waist. "And please, just call me Naruto." Wendy looked at Naruto with a perplexed look. The cat standing next to her simply crossed her arms in disgust. "You're nothing but a leecher." I bet you only joined us to get some hot food and a place to sleep. Naruto shook his head and walked into the bare room. Wendy and Carla watched as he walked into the middle of the room and kneeled down. He unstrapped the small scroll and placed it onto the ground. He carefully unrolled it and revealed a foreign spiral-like design. Both Wendy and Carla looked at the design with much curiosity. What does that mean, Naruto? Asked Wendy with an inspecting look. Carla narrowed her eyes and looked up at Naruto. Is this some rune? Naruto gave them both a smirk and flashed through a series of hand seals. Carla and Wendy both stepped back when Naruto suddenly began to weave signs. Then all of a sudden he stopped and bit down on his thumb. Wendy gave a small eep when blood began to ooze from where Naruto had bit his thumb. Naruto then slammed the blood into the seal and shouted, "Ki." Then all at once a big cloud of smoke filled the room. Wendy and Carla both gave a few coughs as the smoke began to clear. The moment the smoke cleared, both Carla and Wendy's jaw dropped. The small scroll was no longer visible and replaced by a large amount of things. A sleeping bag was nicely rolled up next to some folded clothes. Next to the clothes and sleeping bags were stacks of books and scrolls. Then next to those were several weapons, shuriken, kunai, a few black-hilted katanas, and ninja wire. Wendy was slightly tempted to touch the star-shaped shuriken. "Why do you have so many weapons?" asked Carla as she looked at all the shiny and pointy stuff. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. "Protection? It looks like you have enough weaponry to take on an entire guild," replied Wendy as she looked around at all the equipment. Naruto froze at Wendy's statement. The warm look in his eyes changed to a cold and calculating look. Naruto's change of demeanor went unnoticed by both Wendy and Carla. He stared at the girl and the cat, and was able to infer that they weren't serious with their statement. Calming down a bit, he noticed his heart racing. Taking a deep breath, he responded to both Carla and Wendy. "I decided to stockpile the moment I decided to join Kate's shelter. We're pretty far from a blacksmith, so I didn't want to be short on anything." Wendy looked at all of Naruto's stuff, and was tempted to look through them. Especially all the books he had, since she didn't own too many books. Naruto saw the look in Wendy's eyes, and moved to the pile. "You can look through my books if you want." "Oh no! I don't mean to look through your stuff," replied Wendy as she looked at all the books. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. "Well, at least help me organize." Carla, who had heard Naruto's proposal, moved to look at Naruto's odd choice of weapons. Naruto looked over at the cat. "Don't cut yourself." "As if," replied the feline as she looked at rolled his eyes at the cat. "Why is everyone always so fed up with the shuriken? They may look like stars, but are as deadly as a sword." Naruto watched as Wendy gradually walked over to Naruto's stuff. Naruto pulled the sleeping bag and moved them to one corner of the room. He placed his body in between him and the other two, hiding the bag from view. He unrolled the sleeping bag, revealing a small orange book. Naruto immediately cringed, as he felt the sweat rolling down his back. "Oh man, I just had to keep make out paradise. If the feline finds out what it really is, she'll kill me. Not to mention I can't show this to a little girl." Ack! Naruto widened in fear, and quickly turned around. The two familiar cat screams scared him half to death. He hid the book behind his back, as he closed his eyes to face the cat. "It's not what it looks like. Carla! Why are these so sharp?" Naruto opened his eyes, and found the sight of Wendy kneeling next to the bleeding cat. Naruto's eyes strayed to the ground where a bloody shuriken lay. Naruto let out a sigh of relief, and placed the book under his sleeping bag. He then raced over to Carla and Wendy. "I told you not to cut yourself. Why are they so sharp?" asked Carla as she looked down at her paw. Her paw was in Wendy's lap, where Wendy was taking a look at it. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. "It's a side effect of my wind magic." "Wind magic?" thought Wendy as her head suddenly tilted up to Naruto. Her eyes widened in astonishment. Naruto didn't catch her gaze, and kneeled down to Carla. He forcefully pulled Carla off Wendy's lap and onto his. Carla yelped. "What are you doing?" "Calm down, I'm just healing you," replied Naruto as he weaved a few hand signs. Carla slowly stood on Naruto's lap. She then looked up at Naruto and glared. "Don't touch me again! And Wendy will be the one healing me!" Wendy was broken from her trance, and looked at Carla and Naruto. Then she looked at Carla's paw. "Oh yeah! Here, let me get that for you, you see I made dash." Wendy never finished her sentence. She was too shocked to say anything because of the sight in front of her. Naruto's hand was hovering over Carla's paw, and it was emitting a green color. Wendy watched as Carla's wounds slowly began to disappear. Both Carla and Wendy remained silent. Naruto gave them both a smile, and placed Carla on the floor. Now be careful. Next time I won't heal you, feline. Yo, you healed her? Finally muttered Wendy. Naruto blinked, and looked down at Carla's healed paw. Naruto then looked up at Wendy. Yeah, my grandmother dash. Naruto paused for a moment, and put his finger on his mouth. Then he corrected himself. My grandmothers were both skilled in medical magic. I'm nowhere as good as them, but I'm decent with some healing spells. Healing magic? Asked Carla as she popped from Naruto's lap. She then jumped over to Wendy's side, and turned around to talk. I've never seen anyone else besides Wendy capable of using healing magic. Naruto lifted an eyebrow, and looked over at Wendy. Wendy was suddenly unnerved by Naruto's gaze, and quietly replied that, "'S true, I've never met anyone else that can use magic so similar to mine. The only similarity is that it is meant to heal," replied Naruto. Wendy shook her head, and then pointed at the bloody shuriken. But you also use wind magic. You practically use the same magic as me. Carla's eyes widened at the sudden realization, and looked up at Naruto with suspicious eyes. Are you some type of sky magic user? What? No. I use a lot of types of magic: wind magic, earth magic, cloning magic, blade magic, speed magic, and even takeover. Respond Naruto quickly. Wendy's and Carla's jaws dropped at the number of magics that Naruto had just named. Carla quickly shook her head, breaking her from her trance. What? That's impossible. You're only how old are you? 17. 17? There's no way you could have mastered so many types of magic in so little time, shouted Carla. Wendy remained quiet, and stared at Naruto in awe. And you can use healing magic? You're really amazing, Naruto. Thanks? Asked Naruto as he rubbed the back of his head. Then he asked, So, what type of magic do you use, Wendy? Carla mentioned sky magic? Yes, I mean no, replied Wendy as she thought over the type of magic she had. I'm a dragon slayer, and I use sky dragon slayer magic. Naruto looked at Wendy with a confused face. Dragon slayer? Why would you need to slay a dragon? They don't even exist. The moment Naruto spoke those last words, he knew he should have kept his mouth shut. For a moment an eerie silence became present in the room. Naruto watched as a numerous amount of emotions ran through the face of the young girl. But the emotion that confused Naruto the most was the look of determination she showed at the end. Then in a quiet voice she whispered, They're real. Huh? They're real. They're real. They're real. Grandini is real, shouted Wendy at last. Naruto blinked, and he watched as the girl stood up and raced to the door. Naruto watched as tears ran down her face as she disappeared behind the makeshift door. Wendy! Wait! Shouted Carla. She raced to the door to chase after her, but before she did, she stopped at the makeshift door and looked back at Naruto. You see what you did? Then she was gone. Naruto took a deep sigh, and looked down at the ground. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, and then looked up at the spot Wendy had been standing. A dragon? Naruto shook his head, and slowly stood up. Wait a minute. Dragons? Slayers? She is just like Sting. Naruto stood tall and firm, and looked around the room. Then he himself ran out the room to chase after Wendy. Line. Are we close? How should I know you have the map? You stupid fool, you stupid fool! Why the hell are you asking us? A man whose face closely resembled a monkey trembled. The man was completely bald, and had a mark that looked like a purple half-crescent moon that arched over a small purple dot. The man wore a lime green shirt, and a red and white jacket with banana markings on its collar. A blue gun with a black barrel that resembled a shotgun was strapped to his back. In his hand was a map, and the man was reading it. Behind him 2 massive men stood there. Just like the first man, they both looked very much like a monkey. One of the men has an afro, which bears the same moon symbol as the other man, and matching sideburns. His eyes were covered by some white wavy glasses. This man's outfit consisted of a diamond-patterned shirt with a polka-dotted tie. He wore light pants that were supported with a studded belt, and wore ankle-high boots. The second man had spiky long green wears poncho-like cape, which has diamond-shaped motifs on the edges and comes with a mantle with thin strips hanging from it, and his shoulder pads. He has a sombrero-like hat hanging from his neck on his back, and he wears striped pants with simply shoes. The man with afro looks over to the man with the map. Hey brat, why don't you hurry up? I'm sorry, Zato. It's just hard to read this map in this light, replied the man nervously. His hand trembled slightly, but he tried his best to contain his fear. The man Zato sneered, and he looked away. The man with the map let out a sigh, but he suddenly felt a shiver go down his spine. The feeling of wood against his head nearly made his heart stop. Turning his head slightly to one side, he stared into the impatient eyes of the other man. Gigato, what is it, sir? Hurry up. If we complete this job, the oration cease will stay off our back for a while, replied the man named Gato. The man with the map nodded vigorously, and then he pointed down the forest. This way. The three men continued to walk. For a moment an awkward silence fell upon the three men. Then the man who was guiding the group cleared his throat and asked, What is the job? To take out the guild that may or not be here. That is all, replied Gato as he walked behind the guide. The guide eyes widened in shock, and in a frightened voice asked, Just the three of us? Yes, just the three of us. Do you think I'm not strong enough? Asked Sato in a threatening voice. Gato and I are the strongest of naked mummy, so there was no need to bring anyone else. You were only brought along because you are good with maps. Before the man could respond, Gato stopped walking and in a hushed voice spoke. Up ahead. The other two looked up as instructed, and saw a blue-haired girl sitting silently on a rock. The man guiding them quickly dismissed her. She's just a girl. Yeah, but look at her shoulder, replied Gato as he clutched his club. The guide did as instructed, and saw the same guild make that they were looking for. Zato gave a big grin revealing his golden teeth. He walked forward with authority, and spoke to the other two. Let's just ask her to take us to the guild. This makes the whole job a lot easier. Line. Wendy had stopped weeping by now. She could feel the dry tears on her cheeks as she glided her hand over her cheek. She sat on a large rock. Wendy often came to this rock whenever she felt sad, angry, or just confused. It was a little far away from the camp, but here she was able to think things out. Right now she felt a bit guilty. Wendy had come to the conclusion that Naruto hadn't meant to hurt her with what he said. He had just never seen or heard of a dragon. So that's probably why it was hard for him to believe. Wendy moved her hand from her cheek to the rock. Her hand glided over the hard and bumpy hum to herself. Maybe if I explain myself, Naruto will believe me. But what if he doesn't? What if he's like everyone else, and believes I'm making it up? Wendy remained fixed on her saddened thoughts until she heard the breaking of a stick and a loud crunching of leaves. She turned her head backwards. Carla? Hey there, little girl. Wendy fell of the rock and landed on the ground. Standing in front of her was a man with a weird-looking afro. Then suddenly two men walked out from behind him. Wendy turned her head back and watched as Carla raced behind her. She quickly jumped in between Wendy and the trio of men. Carla glared at the three men. What do you want? Zato was quickly to respond. You see, I wanted to know where your little guild was, Kate Shelter? What do you want with us? We've come to hand some business, replied Gato as waved his club in front of him. Wendy tensed for a moment before staring at the man's nose. That's when she realized it. She quickly looked at the other man's afro and saw the same mark. She quickly took a step backwards and called out to Carla. Carla, we should go. And lead them right to the guild? Asked Carla as she stared down at the men. What business? If you do not answer, we will not show you nothing. Wendy felt her body shake as she stared at the three men. Then out of nowhere she found the courage to speak. Carla, these men are from a dark guild. What? Asked Carla as she looked behind her. Then all of a sudden she felt herself swept off her feet. She went sailing through the air and crashed into Wendy. Standing in Carla's place was an annoyed Gato. That's enough of that, eliminate them. The guide eyes widened a little. What? It's just a kid and a cat. Do it or I kill you. The small phrase was enough to change the man's feelings. After all, he was a part of a dark guild. He pulled out his magic shotgun, and he pointed it at the Wendy and Carla. Carla tried to move, but she felt pain run through her spine. She looked up at Wendy and pleaded her to run. Wendy, go! Run, Wendy! Wendy was dazed from being hit with Carla, and was unable to register Carla's words. Then all of a sudden she watched as a bright light lit up in front of her. Then all of a sudden she watched as a ball of bright light was shot at her. Her eyes widened in terror as she finally realized what is going on. Am I going to die? Then all of a sudden she watched a white cape jumped out in front of her. She stared at the back of a blonde's head. Then all of a sudden she heard a shout. Earth release, Earth-style wall. Line. What? Asked Carla as she looked behind her. Then all of a sudden she felt herself swept off her feet. She went sailing through the air, and crashed into Wendy. Standing in Carla's place was an annoyed Gato. That's enough of that, eliminate them. The guide's eyes widened a little. What? It's just a kid and a cat. Do it or I kill you. The small phrase was enough to change the man's feelings. After all, he was a part of a dark guild. He pulled out his magic shotgun, and he pointed it at the Wendy and Carla. Carla tried to move, but she felt pain run through her spine. She looked up at Wendy and pleaded her to run. Wendy, go, run! Wendy! Wendy was dazed from being hit with Carla, and was unable to register Carla's words. Then all of a sudden she watched as a bright light lit up in front of her. She then watched as a ball of bright light was shot at her. Her eyes widened in terror as she finally realized what was going on. Am I going to die? Then all of a sudden she watched a white cape jumped out in front of her. She stared at the back of a blonde's head. Then she heard a shout. Earth release, Earth-style wall. Line. Naruto walked calmly down the forest. There were trees, bushes, and even a few vines here and there. Naruto looked around at the forest in awe, and couldn't help but compare it to the one in Konoha. Naruto walked deeper into the forest, and farther away from the light that emitted from Kate's shelter. At one point he turned back to look at Kate's shelter, and was surprised that it was no longer visible. She sure went out pretty far. I hope she doesn't do anything stupid, thought Naruto out loud. Naruto grimaced at the thought, and continued to walk further down his path. How could he forget what a dragon slayer was? Had he gone so far off his path that he forgot the friends that helped him so long ago? Naruto sighed as he suddenly felt some pain in the back of his head. Not only did he felt guilty for what he said to Wendy, and for forgetting about Sting and Lecter, but he couldn't get rid of this headache that had been bothering him for months. Naruto stopped walking for a moment, and stood still in the middle of closed his eyes, and let himself rest for a moment. Without realizing, he slowly began connecting to the natural energy in the air. The rush of senjutsu flowing his body calmed the headache for a moment, but he suddenly snapped the connection when he sensed something. He counted 5 people up ahead. Naruto reopened his eyes. He then narrowed his eyes, and looked forward dangerously. Why is there 3 other people so far out in the forest? Thought Naruto. Without giving it a second thought, Naruto jumped up to a tree branch, and raced through the trees. He ran for only a few brief seconds, when he saw a clearing at the end of his path. His eyes widened in alarm as he looked at the scene in front of him. A bald man with a gun of sorts had Wendy in his sights. Instincts took over Naruto, and he formed a single-handed tiger seal. He disappeared in a blur, and appeared in front of Wendy and Carla. His white cape waved in the air, and slowly settled down. He looked forward, and watched as a bright light began to illuminate from the magic seal of the man's gun. Gun magic, concluded Naruto in his thoughts, as he looked at the man in front of him. In his dimension, guns were nothing but a tool used by men that didn't possess chakra. A completely useless tool against a ninja. However, this gun was different. Naruto flashed through a series of hand seals, and he crouched down, slamming his palms into the ground. Earth release, Earth-style wall jutsu. The beam of light exploded from the man's shotgun, and at the same time a wall of earth exploded upwards in front of Naruto. The magic-enhanced bullet exploded on the mud wall. Dirt exploded in all directions, and a bit of dust began to arise. Naruto was crouching behind the wall of earth, when he turned his head backwards. Are you alright, Wendy? Asked Naruto with much concern in his voice. Yes, replied Wendy as she sat straight up. The sound of an unpleasant grunt could be heard at Wendy's lap. Naruto and Wendy both looked down at Carla, who was moaning in pain. I couldn't say the same about me. My back's killing me, spoke Carla with pain in her voice. Here, I'll heal you up, replied Wendy as she quickly moved her hands over Carla, but suddenly Naruto knocked her hand down. He pushed her into Carla, and lowered to the ground. Then he shouted, "Get down!" At that exact moment, two of the men flanked both sides of the wall. Naruto watched as the man with the shotgun flanked from the left, and the afro-looking weirdo flanked from the right. The man with the gun aimed his gun at Naruto, and the man with the afro pointed both his palms at him. A magic seal erupted from Zato's hands. Naruto flashed through some hand seals, and then stomped his left foot into the ground. Earth release earth spikes. A series of shots exploded from the gunman's gun, and a magic blast exploded from Zato's magic seal. At the same time, a bunch of thick cone-like spikes erupted in front of both the men's attacks. The earth spikes acted as a shield, and managed to block all the projectiles aimed at Naruto. Naruto looked at the two men, and his eyes scanned the entire battlefield. "Where's the third one?" asked Naruto to himself. His eyes widened in realization, and Naruto looked up. The poncho-wearing man had jumped over the wall, and had attacked from above. Naruto looked at his choice of weapon, the club, and out of habit reached to the back of his waist. When he felt nothing but the thin air, he frowned, and thought glumly to himself, "The only damn time I don't carry any weapons around." Naruto looked down at Wendy, who was shielding the injured Carla with her body. Naruto pushed Wendy forward, and shouted, "Get out of here!" Wendy stumbled forward, and nearly fell to the ground. She looked back, and watched as Naruto jumped back to his mud wall, and Gato slammed his club into the earth. The ground shattered like glass, and clumps of dirt went flying everywhere. Naruto looked at Gato's back, and growled, "Damn it, I put myself in the worst position. Not only am I pinned against the wall, but if I'm not careful I might hit Wendy." Naruto placed his foot back, and entered the frog kumite stance. "I'm gonna have to defeat him with taijutsu." Then, to Naruto's surprise, the man didn't turn around to face him. Instead, he stepped forward, and began to attack Wendy. He swung his club across his body, and nearly hit Wendy. Wendy, however, managed to duck under his attack and fall back. Gato took a step forward, and swung his club like a maniac. Wendy, even with Carla limiting her movement, managed to maneuver herself around every strike. Then, at the worst possible moment, Wendy tripped over a small piece of rock. Wendy fell onto her back. Carla, who was in Wendy's arms, tried to move forward to shield Wendy, but the pain in her spine disabled her from moving. Wendy and Carla watched in horror as the man brought his club down. Then, just like before, Naruto appeared out of nowhere, and stepped over them. He brought his left arm up, and used it to shield the man's blow. The club connected against Naruto's forearm, and Naruto winced in pain. His right eye twitched furiously, and his teeth sunk into his lips. "His club is enhanced with magic," realized Naruto bitterly. Ignoring the pain in his arm, he pushed the man backwards. The club slid off Naruto's arm, and it tore off part of his sleeve. Gato fell backwards, and at the exact moment the two other men jumped from above the spikes. They both aimed their magic circles at Naruto and Wendy. Naruto formed a single hand seal with his right hand, and shouted at Wendy, "Grab me!" Wendy looked up at Naruto's body, and without hesitation grabbed onto Naruto's leg. Then, to Wendy's and Carla's discomfort, everything became a blur. They felt their insides hurl, and when everything stopped they were no longer in danger. Carla, still perched in Wendy's arms, looked up about 20 yards in front of here. She watched as a small blast exploded from the spot they had just been standing. Then Wendy asked in surprise, "Teleportation magic?" "Not exactly," replied Naruto as he stood in front of Wendy and Carla. Wendy, who had recovered from the little ride, looked up at Naruto. She then looked at his arm, and could see that some bruising had begun to show. "Naruto! Your arm!" Naruto looked down at his left arm, and watched as his forearm slowly turned purple. Then, in a calm voice, replied, "Looks like I broke it." Wendy felt panic shot through her chest. Then she moved over to Naruto. "Let me heal it." Naruto shook his head, and opted to look over at the cloud of smoke. "Let me take care of these 3 clowns first. Then we can heal my arm. But your dash." Wendy didn't get a chance to finish her sentence. Naruto had placed his index finger right above Wendy's lips. Then he whispered, "I'm not as good with kids as I used to be, so please stop talking." Wendy felt a bit confused, and a bit angry at the same time. Why couldn't this man just let her heal him up? She knew she was young, but he kept treating her like she was some delicate thing. Then, to her surprise, she looked into Naruto's eyes. Fear? Though Wendy could tell that it wasn't fear for the enemy, but for what? Confused in her own thoughts, she failed to watch as Naruto picked up a stick. He twirled it in his hand, and then gripped it with a backhand grip. "This will have to do for now," spoke Naruto. The stick was engulfed in a blue aroma, and Wendy looked at it with a bit of doubt. At that exact moment, the three naked mummy members walked out from behind the earth wall. Gato placed his club onto his shoulder, and sneered at Naruto as he spoke. "Teleportation magic? Well, your teleportation magic won't save you from me. Hee, I've been dying for a good fight," added Zato as he readjusted his silly sunglasses. The man with the magic shotgun merely gulped as he stared at Naruto. This kid is no joke. His earthmake magic is phenomenal, and his speed is insane. "A good fight? This won't be nothing more than a warm-up for me," replied Naruto as he placed the stick in front of him. Before either of the two leaders could speak, Naruto burst forward quickly. In less than a second he had managed to cross the distance between him and the attackers. His left arm was snugged closely to his body as he attacked. Gato looked unfazed by the speed, and rushed forward to Naruto. He brought his club up, and launched a strike at Naruto. Naruto brought up his stick, and he brought it up to meet Gato's club. Thud. Gato's eyes widened in shock as he watched half of his club hit the ground. Before he could even register what had happened, he suddenly felt something hit him in the stomach. Naruto had used the moment of distraction to get underneath Gato, and slammed the end of his right elbow in Gato. Gato spit out blood, and his eyes rolled into the back of his head. His body slumped forward, and fell over Naruto's shoulder, landing on his back. Zato and the gunman looked at Naruto in shock. The gunman of the group quickly brought his shotgun up to shoot, but Naruto quickly threw his stick at him. The stick cleanly cut his gun in half. The man stumbled backwards, and he fell onto his bottom. He stared at his cut-up gun in fear. The last man, Zato, growled in anger, and he brought up both of his hands. A white ball of magic appeared again, and he pointed it at Naruto. Die. Several beams of white lights were shot at Naruto. Naruto just narrowed his eyes, and ran towards Zato. In a rapid succession he managed to jump, dodge, and duck under all of the beams. In what looked like a split second, Naruto was quickly a few feet away from Zato. "So you like using these magic balls?" Zato gritted his teeth. "He's right in front of him. I can't miss him, no." "Shut up. Death beam!" shouted Zato in fury, as the ball of magic grew. Naruto smirked, as he rose his palm, and placed it in front of his attack. "Rasengan!" shouted Naruto, and instantly a blue ball of condensed chakra appeared in Naruto's hand. The two attacks met each other, and in a big explosion erupted in the clearing. Line. Wendy was on her knees, and her eyes were wide open. Wendy refused to blink, believing that she would miss the impressive display of Naruto's strength. However, she was forced to shut them, as an explosion exploded in front of her. She covered her face, as dirt and grass flew into her. When the wind blew away, she looked up. A lot of smoke covered the area, and she couldn't see through it. Wendy slowly brought herself to her feet, but she didn't once take her eyes off the smoke. All at once she felt a pang of worry hit her chest. "Naruto?" quietly asked Wendy as she tried not to fear the worst. Having heard no answer, she shouted again. This time her voice carried her feelings of panic and despair. "Naruto!" "Wendy!" uttered a voice behind Wendy. Wendy turned her head backwards and looked down at Carla. Carla slowly made her way to her feet, but her hands were trying to support her back. Even in her state, Carla tried to dust off the dirt on her dress. Then she looked up at Wendy. "Don't go running in, we need to wait for the smoke to clear." "URG!" screeched Carla as Wendy engulfed her in a hug. Wendy cried in joy. "Oh, Carla! You're okay. Get off me, girl. You need to keep your attention to the situation at hand," urged Carla as she tried to break away from Wendy's grip. "She's right, Wendy. You must always keep your eyes on your opponent during a fight." Wendy suddenly let go of Carla, and she turned around slowly. In front of her stood Naruto in a tattered mesh shirt. The edges of his sleeves were all torn up, and his face was a bit dirty with dirt. His left arm was still firmly placed against his side. For a moment Wendy stopped breathing as she looked up at Naruto. Naruto looked down at Wendy and took a deep sigh. "Is she still mad at me?" thought Naruto as he looked down at Wendy. Naruto rubbed the back of his head with his right hand. "Wendy, I'm sore dash." "I'm sorry, Naruto," shouted Wendy as she ran and gave Naruto a hug. Naruto grunted a bit as she accidentally hugged his broken arm as well. Naruto looked down at Wendy, and his eyes shook slightly. Huh. I'm sorry for yelling at you, I'm sorry for running away, and I'm sorry for getting you in a fight and having to save me. I'm sorry, cried Wendy as she held on to Naruto. Naruto took a deep sigh, and he placed his hand on top of her dark blue hair. She pushed her back slightly, and forced her to look up at his eyes. Naruto suddenly felt guilty, as he watched tears drip down her eyes. Naruto shook his head. You don't have to be sorry for anything, Wendy. I'm the one who should be apologizing. Huh? Asked Wendy as she took a step backwards. She brought her hands up to wipe away her tears. Then Naruto continued. I do believe you about dragons and dragon slayers. It's just been such a long time that I've heard of them that it completely slipped my mind. Explained Naruto. Actually, I once met a dragon slayer just like you before, but so much has happened since then that I totally forgot about him. Naruto's eyes narrowed in sorrow. So much. Wendy sniffled a little bit, but suddenly she shook her head. I understand, Naruto, but it really was my fault. I got you into that fight with them. Wendy suddenly stopped talking as she looked over Naruto's shoulder. On the ground was all three of them utterly defeated. Why you defeated them? Naruto nodded, as he looked over his shoulder. Yeah, let's get out of here. If they come back again, we'll just notify the Rune Knights. Huh? Ass looked at the three dark mages with shock. Why was he shrugging them off like they were nothing? Wendy! Ugh! Shouted Carla as she lay on the ground completely unable to move. Help me! I thought you were better! Screamed Wendy as she turned around to look at Carla. Her voice was a bit high-pitched, and you could tell that she was still shaken up by the recent events. I was until you crushed me with your hug, replied Carla. Wendy rushed to Carla's side, and with the utmost care Naruto had ever seen. Wendy picked the cat up and held Carla in her hands. Carla looked at Naruto, but quickly looked the other way. Naruto took a deep sigh as he stared at the annoying cat. Why do I have a feeling this is going to be such drag? Line 1 month later, X783. Naruto lay with his eyes closed underneath a tree. The tree was about 20 feet high, and gave Naruto the right amount of shade. The grass underneath the tree was nice and spongy, giving Naruto the perfect place to lay down. He lay there with his eyes closed, and thought about this new guild of his. Well, it wasn't the worst guild ever. Naruto reopened his eyes, and looked up the tree. A gust of wind blew through the area, and the leaves danced around in the wind, threatening to fall off the tree. Naruto looked at the leaves, and a wave of nostalgia ran through him. He shook his head, and tried to get rid of the thoughts that had just engulfed him. He sat himself up, and he looked around. Then his gaze fell onto his guild Kate shelter. So far he had taken a few missions with Wendy, but all of them had been absolutely boring with little pay. Naruto closed his eyes, and rubbed the side of his temples. I need more money, at this rate I won't have enough. Naruto took a deep sigh, and looked back over to his guild. So far he had managed to get on the good side of all the members, but Naruto still felt uneasy around them. He had no intention of confronting the guild master, but he kind of wanted to tell Wendy the truth of her guild. But would that be the right move? Or would he end up hurting her more? Naruto rubbed his left arm. She was insanely talented, with an enormous amount of potential. She had even healed his broken arm. In a night. Could that be the reason why that dark guild had attacked her? No, it couldn't be that. The guild was too secluded for someone to have heard about her. Then what was it? Revenge? Money? Naruto stopped thinking for a moment, and tried to slow down his thoughts. Too many questions and no answers. Naruto grunted as he fell back onto his about money. First thing was first, he needed money. Naruto! Naruto looked up, and watched as Wendy ran towards him. She was running away from the guild, and towards him. Right behind her was Carla, trying to desperately keep up with the girl. Naruto gave a little smile. Any moment now. He watched as Wendy smirked as his little prediction had come true. In an instant Naruto crossed the distance between her and himself, and caught her. Wendy fell straight into Naruto's arms. You're so clumsy, Wendy, you need to watch where you're going, spoke Naruto with a hint of amusement in his voice. Wendy's face flushed red, and she looked up at Naruto. I'm sorry, Naruto. You don't have to apologize, you did nothing wrong, replied Naruto with a smile. Carla suddenly jumped onto Wendy and shook her head. Wendy, you need to be more careful, and it doesn't look right for a lady to be running towards some man. But Carla, Naruto isn't just some man, he's our guild member. I don't care. Act like a lady. Okay. Naruto looked at both of them and couldn't help but laugh. They were an interesting duo, but he knew they cared about each other deeply. Carla glared at Naruto. What are you laughing at? Asked Carla. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. I thought you were supposed to be the pet, but I guess this relationship is backwards. Naruto, moaned Wendy, quite annoyed. She knew he didn't mean to insult her, but rather he was trying to annoy Carla. And that always led to trouble. Like your little brain could ever understand that I'm no pet, I'm Wendy's friend, replied Carla coldly. Naruto gave her a teasing smile and shrugged his shoulders. Whatever you say, Carly. It's Carla. Same thing. Wendy's sweat dropped as she watched her best friend and Naruto go at it again. For some reason they always argued about every little thing. Wendy gave a nervous smile and looked at both Carla and Naruto. Can we please stop arguing? We need to take another job. Both Carla and Naruto replied simultaneously. Both Naruto and Carla cringed at the idea of taking another job. Carla looked away from Naruto and looked over at Wendy. Wendy, these jobs that we have aren't really improving our skills. Maybe we should wait until we get a good one, replied Carla, and Naruto merely shook his head in agreement. For a moment Wendy was dumbfounded by the fact that Naruto and Carla were actually agreeing with something, but almost immediately she became sad. But I really like doing jobs, muttered Wendy as she looked down at the ground. She had been so excited when the master had allowed her to do outside jobs with Naruto. No matter how boring they seemed. She was always excited to go outside the guild and explore. She had thought that both Naruto and Carla thought the same. Naruto looked down at Wendy and could instantly tell how she was feeling. He of course would have done something dramatic in order to get what he wanted. But he was surprised how mature Wendy was for her age. Even though he had to admit she was probably much more mature than he was before he came to this world. Then for a moment Naruto looked into Wendy's eyes. For some reason every time he saw her frown he felt compelled to do something about it. Was it because she was the first one to show him so much affection since he entered this hellhole? Naruto rubbed the back of his head, took a deep sigh. I was always too soft, thought Naruto bitterly. Wendy and Carla's attention were brought up to Naruto. Naruto looked down at the two and rubbed the back of his head. I'll have to agree with Carla. We're just wasting our time doing those jobs we're getting. We waste nearly all our reward money completing one of these stinking jobs. Carla smiled and folded her arms across her body. About time he said something right. Wendy looked at the ground a bit dejected. Then all at once her eyes lit up when Naruto spoke again. But! No buts! Cut off Carla. She looked at Naruto angrily. We agreed. The jobs we are receiving are not worth our time. Naruto nodded and he smirked. That may be true, but it's time we start receiving even better jobs. Carla eyed Naruto with a bit of suspicion. Wendy's eyes lit up, and she jumped up. She then looked up at Naruto and asked, And how do we do that? It's simple, we complete an S-rank mission under the name of Kate Shelter, replied Naruto as it was the simplest idea in the world. Wendy's eyes widened in terror. Her shoulders slumped down, and she looked at Naruto as he was crazy. Carla growled slightly, and shouted at Naruto. Are you crazy? These jobs we are doing are nothing close to S-rank. How do you expect us to complete one? Naruto suddenly gave them a crazed grin. In an instant he twirled around, and his cape waved in the air. At once he jumped into the air, and he landed back on one foot. He bounced to the left 3 times, and then jumped to his other leg and jumped to his right side. All while holding up 9 fingers. I might not have mentioned it before, but you are looking at an official S-rank mage recognized by the Magic Council. Huh! Uttered both Carla and Wendy as they looked at Naruto. Naruto cringed at their reaction, and he stumbled forward. He looked down at both with a hint of annoyance. He straightened himself up, and gave a cough. As I said, I'm an S-rank mage recognized by the Magic Council, replied Naruto. Wendy's mouth made a slight wow, and Carla looked at the ground in slight anger. Then she asked with vigor, Then why did it take you so long to take care of those fools? Naruto gave the cat an annoyed look, and crossed his hands. Then he shrugged his shoulders. I was having an off day. You don't have to be so harsh, Carla. I mean, he's an S-rank wizard. I knew he was strong, but that's ridiculous. How old are you again? Naruto? Asked Wendy, but she paused for a second, finding her last question impolite. Wendy then nervously added, I don't mean to sound impolite. Naruto couldn't care less about manner, and instead smiled at Wendy's sudden burst of excitement. Honestly, I could have wiped those guys out in a second, but I was ill prepared for the situation. It had been a long time since I've had to worry about a comrade. If I was to tell her that, she would probably start to believe she's weighing down, thought Naruto silently as he turned to Wendy. Then he replied, I'm 17, Wendy, but I'll be 18 this month. When is it? Maybe we should have a party? Asked Wendy to herself as she looked at Carla. Maybe if we get this big mission done, we'll have enough for a surprise party. Carla's sweat dropped slightly, and gave a deep sigh. Wendy, it's not a surprise if he already knows. Naruto gave a light chuckle, as he watched the mortified expression on Wendy's face. Naruto replied, My birthday's the 10th of October. A moment of silence passed between Carla and Wendy. Then both of their eyes widened in realization. But Naruto, today's the 11th. Spit out Wendy as she looked up at Naruto. Naruto's eyes widened a bit, but they quickly closed. He raised his arm, and lightly scratched the back of his head. Oh really? I can't believe I let that slide. Maybe since it's been a long time since I've celebrated it. Huh? Asked Carla a bit confused. What do you mean a long time? For a moment Carla and Wendy saw a rare glimpse of Naruto blushing. His eyes narrowed down in sadness, and he looked at the ground. Well, I grew up living on my own as a kid, so I never did celebrate my birthday as a kid. Then when I was 12 I became a NI, wizard from my village, and I was often on duty. In fact, I can't ever recall celebrating my birthday. Both Carla and Wendy looked at each other, and both realized that they had chosen a bad topic. But before any of them could apologize, Naruto waved them off and kept talking. Enough about that, let me tell you this big plan of mine. Line the following day era. Naruto walked down a large and busy street. Merchants yelled loudly, kids wailed, and the smell of many foods filled the air. Naruto walked at a slow and easygoing pace, as if not wanting to miss a single detail. Then all of a sudden, he stopped moving and looked up at the horizon. What he gazed at was not the sun, but a large hill that at the top stood an enormous building. The Magic Council headquarters, thought Naruto with much frustration. Sometime during the past year, Kurama had convinced him to try and work for the Magic Council. He had thought that by working for them, he could create some type of positive identity in Fiori. Not the identity known as Kitsune. Lurking around the shadows was ninja cool, but Naruto had to admit that Kurama was absolutely right. It was much easier to lurk around as Mr. Perfect than lurk around as a total stranger. Unfortunately for Naruto, he ended up getting the short end of the stick. For some odd reason the council had come to rely heavily on Naruto to complete S-rank missions that weren't typically favored by S-rank wizards. That meant taking on long boring jobs, with low pay and crappy conditions. But Naruto did not complain. These jobs usually allowed him to keep his mind off the trouble at hand. Naruto took a deep breath, as he noticed he was slowly coming around with his situation. There will probably never be any way back home. Now the question that pops into Naruto's mind is very simple. What should he do with his life? Naruto looked away from the council building, and peeked behind his shoulder. He gazed back at Wendy, who was admiring some stand that held plenty of sweets. Wendy peered at each sweet with a look of hunger. Then right next to her was Carla, slightly tugging at her skirt, pleading her to move along. Carla looked up to Naruto, and motioned him to come over and help. Naruto gave a smirk, and then held up his index finger. Very slowly he swayed his finger back and forth. Naruto watched as Carla yelled out to him, but Naruto was unable to hear her due to the loud noise of the market. Naruto turned around, and began to walk forward. At least for now, he should at least complete Jalao's request. Looking after Wendy isn't too bad, and for the moment it has given him an opportunity to stay out of trouble. Kitsune had moved around the area too much, and had made too many enemies. Naruto acknowledged that, and knew that if he moved around too hastily he would be killed. Naruto walked to the end of the market, and was about to make a turn when he heard the sound of a doorbell going off. Naruto instantly tensed, and his right hand flew to his left side and readied his blade. He turned his body to face the location of the sound. Naruto gave a sigh of relief, when all he was looking at was some man entering a house. Naruto took a deep breath, and turned the corner into another street. I need to be especially careful around them. They aren't exactly too happy with me. Line. Naruto was leaning against a tall white wall. His head was cocked to the ground, and his eyes were closed. He suddenly opened them, when he heard a pair of feet running down the street. He looked to his left, and he watched as Wendy raced towards him. Perched on her shoulder was Carla, who looked less than delighted to see Naruto. Wendy slowed down as soon as she saw Naruto, and came to a slow halt. Her face was bright red, and her breathing was loud and long. Her hands went straight to her knees, and she ended up looking straight to the ground. Carla jumped off Wendy, and glared at Naruto. Then she demanded, "You imbecile! Why did you ditch us like that? Do you know how easy it would be for Wendy to get lost in this huge city? Or even worse, kidnapped?" "Nice to see you too," replied Naruto with a cheeky grin. Carla did an unusual grow, and launched herself at Naruto. She dug her claws deep into Naruto's face. "Nice to see you, nice to see you. You've had us running around all day," accused Carla. Wendy looked at her friends in terror and desperately tried to get them to knock it off. But it was difficult to understand her, with her erratic breathing. "See Carla, asterisk gasp asterisk, st stop itt." Naruto finally managed to get Carla off him, and he threw her off. "Stop doing that!" demanded Naruto. "Why do you always have to claw my face?" Carla dusted off her skirt, and folded her arms. She looked off to the side, and avoided eye contact. Then she responded, "Why do you always have to be such an imbecile? Carla, you don't have to be so mean about it. I'm not too mad, and it was kind of like training if you think about it," spoke Wendy as she finally managed to catch her breath. Naruto nodded, and gave a not such convincing grin. "Exactly. It wasn't because I got lost in my thoughts, and moved ahead without you." "You," seethed Carla from under her breath. Naruto quickly clapped his hands, and moved to quickly change the subject. "Alright guys, let's move on with phase 1 of our little plan." "Phase 1? asked Wendy as she slightly tilted her head to the side. Naruto nodded, and faced to look at the building behind him. It was a rather big building, but it wasn't even close to competing for the biggest building in Era. The building was completely white with the exception of the blue roof tiles. 2 large doors stood at the entrance of the building, and above the doors was hung a blue cross. "This is the job center in Era, Fiore, that is run by the Magic Council," explained Naruto. "In fact, it's 1 of 10 scattered all across Fiore." "Wait a minute, 1 in 10? asked Carla as she picked up on that fact. Wendy looked at Carla, and then took back her attention at Naruto. "If there were 10 of them, wouldn't there have been 1 closer to Kate's shelter?" "That is true, but this is the one that receives the most jobs, since the Magic Council headquarters is stationed here. So, we'll definitely get a job." Naruto quickly spun on his heels, and turned around to face the building. Then like a soldier he began to march towards the doors. Wendy giggled at Naruto's antics and followed in pursuit. Carla took a deep breath, and looked at Naruto. "This boy's so eccentric and a bit of a knucklehead," thought Carla, then she looked at Wendy, who was doing the same silly march as Naruto. "But he's only been here a month, and he's slowly eased her out of her little shell." Carla suddenly gave a little smile. "I guess he ain't too bad." Then all of a sudden she watched as Naruto ran face first into the door. Carla's eyes nearly bulged out of her eyes, and she ran to Naruto. Then she heard Naruto mutter, "Clothes for remodeling? Be back in a week." "Who am I kidding? He's the worst," thought Carla bitterly. Wendy, who was beside Naruto, looked up at the sign, and let out a sigh of relief. She turned to the side, and hid her expression from Naruto. "I don't have to tag along on an S rank anymore," thought Wendy happily in her mind. She had been excited about coming to visit such a large city as Era, but the moment she had heard about Naruto's plan, she had been more than scared out of her mind. Of course, after hearing Naruto's reasoning, she decided it wasn't too bad of a plan. Naruto would do an S rank, and help gain Kate's shelter some popularity. All she had to do was tag along. Still, an S rank mission is no joke. Anything could happen at any moment, I bet, concluded Wendy in her thoughts. Then she gave a smile. "Phew!" Wendy turned around, and tried to give Naruto a sad it was proving difficult as a grin threatened to grow. Oh well, Naruto, it looks like we have to go back now. Naruto, who had been staring at the sign, had missed Wendy's comment. He kept staring at the sign, and gave it an odd look. This place underwent construction 4 months ago. Why would it be under construction again? Naruto! Naruto blinked out of his thoughts, and suddenly he felt a piece of rock hit him in the back of the head. Naruto cocked his head to the directions in which the rock came, and looked for the person responsible. Then, not really to his surprise, stood Carla with another rock in her hand. Why'd you hit me now? Asked Naruto. Carla squeezed the rock in her hand, and she replied, I don't know, maybe because you're a very stupid boy. She chucked the rock at Naruto, but this time Naruto jumped to the side. Carla then yelled, You said coming out here, we would be guaranteed a job. Hey! How was I supposed to know the place had been closed down? Defended Naruto. You said you were an S rank recognized by the council, maybe you could have called in advance. Wendy, who had been standing by the side, just like in many fights, suddenly stepped up and tried to defuse the situation. Guys, can we please stop fighting? Hello, sir? All 3 of them stopped in their tracks. They all looked around for the sound of the voice that they had just heard. Naruto suddenly looked behind him, and was surprised to see a middle-aged man standing at the end of an alley. Naruto had to admit that the man gave off some type of rich aura. His black hair was slicked back, and he had a nicely trimmed mustache. The man wore a dark blue suit over a white, tucked-in shirt, and dark dress pants. Hello? Replied Naruto with some suspicion in his voice. Carla, who had been angry a moment, had suddenly cooled down. She looked at the man and asked, Can we help you with something? The man gave a large smile, showing off his white spotless teeth. I happen to hear that you're an S-rank mage looking for some work? Naruto looked back at Wendy, who had unconsciously taken a step back. Then Naruto looked back at the man. I guess we are. Then let me invite you to some tea. Line. Naruto, Wendy, and Carla stood on one side of a booth, while the rich middle-aged man sat on the other side. A cup of tea and a piece of cake was placed in front of each individual. Naruto didn't even bat an eye at the food, but went quickly to checking out the restaurant they were in. It was a very fancy restaurant, the one that you would need to pay a lot of money just to get a seat. There weren't that many people, but the few that were looked like they were rolling in cash. Naruto turned his attention back to the man in front of him, and then without warning asked him, Who are you, and what is this job you speak of? The man gave them a cheesy smile, and answered, The name is Dan Junel, and today I have come in search of some escorts. You see, I have a daughter that will be visiting a friend, and I would feel much more relaxed if I knew that an S-rank wizard was looking after her. Wendy, who had been listening quietly beside Naruto, suddenly spoke up. So, Mr. Junel, all we would have to do is make sure your daughter gets to her friend's house safely? The man brought his hand to his chin, not once easing the smile off his face. Then he replied, That's most of it. Babysitting? That doesn't really sound like an S-rank mission to me, spoke up Carla as she turned to face Naruto. Carla lifted her eyebrow, and watched as Naruto looked at Dan with a calculating look. Then Naruto spoke up. Junel, as in Junel Corporation? If any possible, the man's smile widened even further. Then he nodded his head. Carla and Wendy both looked at Naruto and Dan, wondering what Junel Corporation was. As if reading their thoughts, Naruto explained. So our job is to escort the daughter of the prestigious Junel Corporation, the #1 producer of lacrima in the world. Naruto's head tilted to the side, and he gazed out towards the sky. So why would such an important man be hiding in the shadows, and end up asking an unimportant mage as myself to do such an important job? Carla and Wendy remained quiet, as they awaited the man's answer. All of a sudden the man's smile had disappeared. Then he gently reached for his cup, and took a long drink. He looked up at Naruto, and then his creepy smile returned. He placed his cup down, and finally replied, You're quite smart, as I expected out of you, Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto rose an eyebrow at the sudden change of tone in his voice. Then suddenly realization began to dawn on Naruto. This man knew of him. Why did he know of him? Naruto tried to calm himself down mentally. He couldn't allow this stranger to believe he had been caught off guard. But then Dan's next words broke him of his thoughts. Or should I say key dash? Smash. The teacup that Naruto had been holding suddenly exploded in his hand. Wendy and Carla jumped from their seats as they looked at Naruto's enclosed hand. Shards of glassware lay on the table. Naruto's hand had begun to bleed from the glass, and he looked down at his hand. "Quite the grip you got there, Naruto," noted Dan with a satisfied smile on his face. Naruto, on the other hand, was not smiling. He was glaring daggers at Dan. Naruto cleared his throat and looked up at Dan. "I apologize, I underestimated the strength of the glassware," replied Naruto, and then he looked over at Wendy and Carla. Wendy looked quite startled, and Carla looked at Naruto suspiciously. Naruto then said, "Wendy, Carla, would you mind grabbing one of the workers to clean this up, and while you're at it, would you mind going through my bag at the front and grabbing some bandages? First zipper from the top." Wendy gave a slight nod and looked at Carla. Carla, you get the worker and I'll get the bandages." Carla hesitated to stand up, looking at both Dan and Naruto. However, she decided it was best to leave them to speak. "Okay, let us go." Carla and Wendy stood from the booth and left to do their little tasks, leaving behind Naruto and Dan at the table. Naruto looked back at Dan with a sign of irritation. "How the hell dash?" Naruto was cut off as Dan rose his hand to answer. He then pulled out something from underneath the table and placed it onto the obscured the item from anyone else's view and showed only Naruto. Naruto stared at the object with growl and then looked away. "Damn it, as I have come to fear, the only thing that could possibly connect me with Kitsune." Dan gave a satisfied smile and then looked up at Naruto. "Do not fret, I have not come to turn you in. Rather, I have sought you out for a very important mission. As you already know, Dash." Now it was Naruto's turn to cut off Dan. "Why the hell would you want to hire someone as potentially dangerous as me? Especially to protect your precious daughter. You're not a dangerous man, that girl is proof of it," replied Dan with confidence. Dan looked around the room and scooted closer to Naruto. "Not to mention I know you won't betray me, or else everyone will know your little secret." Naruto narrowed the man suspiciously and scooted back into the booth. "If you really want to protect your daughter, why not hire someone from a guild like Fairy Tail or Phantom Lord? If you allow me to finish, I might be able to," replied Dan as he looked at Naruto, rather annoyed at this point. Naruto took a deep breath and remained silent. Dan looked up at Naruto. Dan carefully dropped the sound of his voice. "I have reason to believe that someone may be conspiring against me." Naruto's eyes widened at such a claim, but didn't say anything. He allowed the owner of Janelle Corporation to continue. "In the past month I've seen a total of 10 attempts against my life. Let me note that attempted assignations are nothing new, but the sudden increase can't be a wants to get rid of me. I've brought this up to the Magic Council, but for some reason they have yet to do anything about it. Almost as if they are unaware of my situation," replied Janelle, looking Naruto straight in the eye. "I believe that someone is purposely keeping the Magic Council from helping me, and for someone to be able to do something like that must be pretty high up there," added Janelle. Janelle paused and looked around. "I acknowledged a week ago that I won't be receiving any help, so I submitted a job request for a powerful mage to at least look after my family. I can usually hold myself against most assassins, but my family cannot. However, right before I could submit my request, all 10 job centers across Fiori were closed for a week. In fact, this was the 10th and final job center I had come across." Naruto rose an eyebrow and then asked, "What makes you believe this is believed to be connected to you?" Dan took a deep breath. "Today is October the 12th. Tomorrow my daughter will be leaving to the capital of Fiori to meet up with her friend, Princess. They will be traveling to Magnolia to capture their magnificent harvest festival. It will take place on October 15th. Naruto's eyes widened at the sudden implication, but before he could get a chance to voice his opinion, Wendy and Carla had returned. Carla with a waste basket and hand broom, while Wendy carried an oversized backpack with her. Naruto, I couldn't find the bandages, so I brought the whole thing," explained Wendy. Carla then placed the hand broom on the table. "The waitress just brushed me off and handed me this. What terrible service, I must say." Dan gave a hearty laugh and looked at Wendy. "You came back at the perfect moment. I was just explaining the details of your job." Wendy and Carla gave Dan a curious look, while Naruto eyed Dan with concern. Dan clapped his hands dramatically and said, "Yes, you three will be escorting my daughter, Athena Janelle, to the Crocus, where you will meet up with the royal guard and escort both my daughter and Princess Fiore to a special event in Magnolia. Wendy's jaw dropped in astonishment. They were going to meet a princess? Not any princess, but the one of this nation. Carla brushed off Wendy's childish reaction and looked at Dan with the same suspicion as earlier. Why would you need more protection if you have the royal guard looking after her? It's because the royal guard's utmost priority is to protect the Princess of Fiore. If comes down to it, they will choose to protect the life of the princess over Athena, replied Naruto as he looked over at Dan. A look of satisfaction on his face concluded that Naruto's hunch was right. If someone was truly conspiring against Juno Corporation, the recent string of events made sense. Whoever was behind this had enough power to keep a man as powerful as Dan Junel from reaching out to the magic community. If they had that much power, Naruto would assume that they also had intel on the royal guard of Princess Fiore. If his assumption was on point, then attacking Athena when she was with the princess would be perfect. Wow, I hadn't thought it like that, answered Wendy as she looked at Naruto. Then Wendy gave her a big smile. You're really smart, huh, Naruto? That's probably why Mr. Junel came to look for you. You must be a very powerful mage, no wonder you're S rank. Naruto was stunned. Him, smart? His whole life he had been told he was some blockhead. You give him too much credit, Wendy, replied Carla as she crossed her arms. Dan gave a smirk, and then spoke. You have no idea, so you accept the job, Naruto? Naruto sighed as he looked up at Dan. Sounds more like a command than request. Naruto gave a forced smile. Of course, Mr. Junel. We'll discuss the terms of our payment on a later date. I trust you will pay us without a formal agreement from the Magic Council. Of course, replied Dan as he returned Naruto's smile. Naruto cringed. Great. Line next day. Naruto, Wendy, Carla, and Dan stood in front of an enormous mansion. Naruto's eye twitched at the size of the house. How filthy rich was this man? Enough to be earned the title as richest man in all of Fiore. Wendy and Carla stared at the property in astonishment, and couldn't help but let their jaw drop. Not only was the house enormous, but the garden was even bigger. Wendy looked at Dan, who was swelling in pride. Then she asked, Is this all yours? Dan nodded and then asked, Do you remember that beautiful forest of cherry blossom trees we passed by? Wendy nodded and then Dan continued, We own everything from her too. That. Naruto was the one to suddenly confront Dan. That small forest was like 30 miles from here. Dan just let out a smile. Of course. Naruto felt the blood drain from his veins. Maybe it wasn't a bad idea working for this man. Is that you, Daddy? The trio from Kate's shelter looked over to the front of the mansion, where the voice had originated from. A tall brunette girl with an hourglass figure stood at the entrance. She wore an elegant yellow sundress that came down to her knees, and wore a sun hat with a fancy blue ribbon on top of her long luscious hair. She wore an expensive piece of jewelry around her neck that matched the color of the ribbon on her sun hat. The girl could not have been any older than Naruto. Dan gave the girl a large smile. Well, of course. Who else would I be, Athena? The girl rushed to her father's side and gave him an enormous hug. Oh, how have I missed you, I'm glad I was able to see you once again before I left. The girl let go of her father and turned her attention to the mages. That's when the girl spotted Naruto. For an instant a blush appeared on her, but she quickly hid. She failed to hide the mischievous look in her eyes. Wendy stepped forward to introduce herself. Hello, I'm Dash. Wendy didn't get a chance to finish when Athena pushed her away. Athena then got up real close to Naruto and gave him a seductive smile. Hello, there, what's your name, handsome? A gust of wind blew through garden, and was the only sound that could be heard in the vicinity. Then Wendy, Naruto, and Carla shouted, H. Line. CH4 S rank. Kitsune. CH4 S rank. Naruto. Person talking. Naruto. Person thinking. Naruto. Summons Biju Dragon talking. Naruto. Summons Biju Dragon thinking. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Jutsu Magic Technique. Author's note. Flashback no Jutsu. Line October 13th X783. The hot sun blazed over Naruto, and its heat covered him like a hot blanket. Naruto tugged on his collar and pulled down his straw hat as he tried to ignore the heat. He found it rather unusual that it would still be this hot in early October. It didn't help that he had been walking behind some carriage for hours. Naruto looked up at the carriage and sighed as he stared at the Junel Corporation logo. Naruto felt an intense sensation of anger well up in him. That man had figured out his identity with no trouble. It left Naruto baffled, but at the same time it didn't surprise him. After all, the man was a mage of that craft. The very one that held the truth at the tip of their fingers. There was little Naruto could really do. If he truly wanted to shush things up, he would need to slaughter every mage that wielded that magic. Naruto quickly rejected the idea, knowing very well that it was an impossible task to do even for himself. Not to mention, unnecessary slaughter was not something he liked doing. Naruto's eyes gazed at his hands, and for a moment he saw a flash of blood stain his hands. The image was only there for a brief second, but it burned deep into his skull. Yeah, there was no need for him to kill again. He needed to set an example. Naruto's eyes gazed to his left, and looked down to his side. His blue-haired companion looked worse than him. She had refused to go in the carriage, and ride with their escort. Wendy had explained to Naruto that she too was in charge of protecting Athena, so she would walk behind it like Naruto. Her cheeks were bright red, and she looked like she could really take a break. It didn't help that she was carrying Carla in her hands. Naruto grinned, and he quickly moved behind her. He scooped her off her feet, and threw her up onto his shoulders. Wendy quickly scrambled her hands on top of Naruto's head, wrapping her hands on top of Naruto's straw hat. She kept herself from sliding off. What are you doing, Naruto?" asked Wendy with a flushed look on her face from both the head and childish position she was in. Naruto didn't reply, and instead removed his straw hat. He tossed it perfectly into the air, and as it came down landed right on Wendy's head. The straw hat was a bit big for Wendy, and it quickly slid over her eyes. Carla, who had been in Wendy's hands, slid out of her grip, and jumped down to the ground. Wendy used the opportunity to adjust the hat. Carla walked by Naruto's side, and began to lecture Naruto. "You shouldn't be spoiling Wendy, she needs to learn the hardships of a long walk," said Carla with a yawn as she stretched her arms a bit. Naruto looked down at the little feline, and gave a smirk. "I'm not spoiling anyone. I was just having a little trouble looking ahead, and I was gonna ask Wendy to be my scout." Wendy's eyes pouted, knowing that it was Naruto's excuse to give her a break. While she appreciated it, something inside her kept her from letting Naruto treating her like a child. She hated being looked down for her age, and even more when it came from the people she adored. Wendy's thoughts were interrupted as Naruto and Carla began to bicker. "That's a stupid excuse," replied Carla, not buying Naruto's obvious lie. Naruto chose to roll his eyes and add, "Well, you could also learn a two-or thing from Wendy. Having her carry you for a good 3 miles. Carla blushed at the remark, and refused to meet Naruto's eye. After all, she refused to explain her unspoken pact with Wendy. The one that started when Carla began to fly Wendy around for the exchange of Wendy occasionally carrying her around. "Naruto, please, it's not like that. I wanted to carry Carla because she is my friend," replied Wendy as she rode on Naruto's shoulders. Naruto gazed up, and met Wendy's chocolate-colored eyes. Naruto didn't say a word as he stared her down. Wendy's gaze, he knew it too well. Every single time Wendy stuck up for Carla, Naruto was just looking into his own reflection. Wendy then spoke out. "Anyways, I think you should let me down." "Carla is right," remarked Wendy as she crossed her arms, and tried to make herself look bigger. Wendy then lifted her head up in a more proper manner, and she announced, "I'm a big girl." "Then get off, no one is stopping you." A pause followed after Naruto's statement. They walked further down their path following the carriage, and a smile began to grow on Naruto's face. Meanwhile, Wendy looked down from below and then back up to the in front of her. Her muscles ached, and at the very moment getting off didn't exactly sound fun. Wendy pulled down the straw hat to cover her eyes, as she refused to look at either Naruto or Carla. Carla, who had remained quiet, looked up at Wendy, and rose an eyebrow. Naruto's smile had grown even more, and he quickly burst out in laughter. In between laughs he asked, "Well? Aren't you getting off?" "I dash," exclaimed Wendy as she tried to gain the courage to talk. Embarrassed by having to show weakness, she finished, "It's just I'm really tired, and it feels kind of cool to be up here. I can see everything." Naruto's eyes gazed back at the back of the carriage, and his lips began to move. "Having and wanting your own strength is okay, Wendy, but you should also learn that relying on your allies is a strength of its own," spoke Naruto with much wisdom behind his words. Wendy's embarrassment began to waver, when Naruto's much more wiser tone arose. She had noticed that whenever Naruto had some advice to give, his tone and personality would change. It was odd, and for some reason Wendy came to enjoy it. Since they always came with some story or adventure of Naruto's. What do you mean by that? Asked Carla, not quite understanding Naruto's words. Naruto closed his eyes, and an image of Itachi flashed through his mind. After all, it was the greatest lesson he had learned from the man. Naruto reopened his eyes and answered Carla. The best of the best don't become the best because they can do everything on their own. They become the best because they realize that doing everything is impossible, and learn that relying on your comrades is a strength of its own. That still doesn't answer my question, replied Carla, a bit annoyed at Naruto's answer. She didn't like his usual complicated answers, and sometimes wished that the dumb blonde had to give such dumb answers. Naruto looked at the cat and sighed. It's not something easy to teach, it's something you just have to learn on your own. Just remember this. It's not a weakness to ask for help, it's a weakness if you can't ask for help. Carla hushed up, trying to decipher Naruto's words. Wendy, who was looking up at the sky, stared at it with a soft look on her face. Then she gave an inaudible mutter. A strength of its own. The trio trotted behind carriage for a couple minutes in complete silence. The only thing that could be heard were the hoofs of the horses pounding loudly on the floor, and the occasional neigh from the horse. However, their peaceful silence was pierced by a shout. Oh, Naruto! Naruto's shoulders slumped as he gave a sigh at the sound of the voice. He closed his eyes for a moment, and sped toward the carriage, praying for it to not cause his death. Wendy squealed at the sudden increase of pace, and Carla was left chasing after them. Naruto came to a quick stop, and was quickly walking by the side off the carriage door. There was a little opening that acted as a glassless window. A girl's head peeked out from behind the window. The girl gave Naruto a flirty smile, and twirled her fingers in her long brown luxuriant hair. Naruto, how long until we arrive to Crocus? Asked Athena with a sparkle in her eyes. Naruto looked up at the sky, and examined it for a minute. I would say an hour, replied Naruto stoically. Athena gave a loud audible sigh, and rested her hand on the palms of her hands. She looked down at Naruto, and gave him a pout. I'm so bored, why don't you come entertain me? Suggested Athena as she motioned for Naruto to come into the carriage. A sound of muffled laughter suddenly came from the front of the carriage. Naruto's left eye twitched at the driver of the carriage, not finding the situation humorous at all. Wendy's, who had been sitting on Naruto's shoulder, face flushed red at the sudden implications of Athena's actions. She had read in Carla's love novels that the girl needed to be open with their emotions, but to this extent? I would take your offer, but I'm busy with protecting your carriage. However, do not fret, Athena. We will soon arrive to the capital, and your friend, the princess, can entertain you if you wish, replied Naruto with no emotion in his voice. Naruto didn't really care for the mission, and it wasn't really his desire to befriend the girl. Athena clenched her fists at the sudden rejection of her offer. She quickly looked the other way, and crossed her arms. Naruto walked alongside Athena for a few moments, before deciding that it would be best if he fell back a bit. A sly smile appeared on Athena's face. It didn't go unnoticed by Naruto, and the mischievous smile almost made Naruto abandon the mission, but he just waited out for what came next. Athena looked towards the direction of the driver and shouted out, Driver, I'm getting bored. I want you to move at max speed, I do not wish to wait no longer. The driver, who had been sitting comfortably at the front, replied to Athena, But Lady Janelle. No buts. The driver peeked around the corner of the carriage, and gave Naruto an apologetic smile. The sound of a whip being cracked could be heard, and Naruto and Wendy watched as the carriage moved rapidly ahead. Wendy placed her hand on her chin, and narrowed her eyes. Is this what they call the lover's quarrel? Carla had finally caught up to Naruto, when she let out a groan watching the carriage speed up. What's going on? Asked Carla as she watched the carriage travel farther down the trail they were on. Wendy was going to respond, when Naruto grabbed Carla, and handed her to Wendy. Then, to the surprise of the two, Naruto jumped towards a tree. Lady Athena's patience seems to be running thin. We'll be going at full speed now, replied Naruto with an annoyed look on his face. Then for the second time Wendy squealed as they began traveling through the trees at blinding speeds. Wendy's arms tied themselves around Naruto's forehead, and Carla hung on to Wendy with her claws deep into Wendy's clothes. Line. Athena rested her head on her palm, and took a deep sigh. She lazily looked out of her carriage's window. Her eyes gazed up at the clouds, as her carriage zoomed by. Athena couldn't believe that stupid mage. How could someone reject her? She looked away from the clouds, and she reached out for a purse on the seat beside her. Athena carefully pulled out a mirror, and took a hard, long look. Her light brown hair matched perfectly with her honey-colored eyes. She was by far from being ugly, and she was rich and powerful too. However, that didn't seem to catch the eye of that stupid, gorgeous blonde. Athena tried to give an angry frown, but a smile kept threatening to spill every time she thought of Naruto. She had never seen a man like him. Gorgeous blue eyes with the sun-kissed hair. It was match made in heaven. And those whisker marks gave him a ferocious look. Now that was Athena's type of man. Athena was broken from her trance, when suddenly her carriage came to a stop. Her eyes peered out of the window, and was met with the beautiful sight of Crocus. The name surely lived up to its definition. Flowers of all sizes and colors could be seen all over the city. Athena gave an enormous smile as she thought of her younger friend, Hizui. To Athena, Hizui was a very close friend. The girl was only 2 years younger than her, but to Athena she was the precious little sister she never had. Hizui was a bit on the shy side, contrary to Athena's rather loud personality. However, for some reason they had always gotten along. The carriage began to move again, as they were forced to move at a much slower speed inside the capital. Athena sat back in her carriage, and began to think about tomorrow's adventure. They would be traveling to Magnolia, in order to quell Hizui's desire to see the famed Fantasia parade. Athena would be lying if she wasn't excited, but as the daughter of Junelle Cooperation she would never admit it. Thinking about of her father's company, she couldn't help but wonder why her father had hired wizards. Athena wasn't complaining about the hunk of a man she had received as a guard, but her father had never resorted to hiring wizards to guard her family. Not for her or her elder brothers. An oddity indeed. Oh well, she could always question her father later. At the moment she was happy with her guard. Not too enthusiastic about the brat and cat, but they seemed to be a package deal with Naruto. They appeared to be siblings at best, even if they looked like polar opposites. Nevertheless, he had lost them long ago. Now how were they supposed to get into the castle without her? It seemed she would need to stop her driver, and wait for them to catch up. Athena turned towards the window, and was about to shout, but her voice got caught in her throat. Walking beside her carriage was Naruto, and he was no longer carrying Wendy on his shoulders. Instead, he had her slung on his right shoulder, and Wendy looked awfully sick. He appeared to be in a deep argument with a cat of his. "What the hell are you doing here?" asked Athena out loud, not caring for her language or status as a Junelle. Naruto looked over at Athena, and gave her sly smile, finding it amusing that the girl was left stumped. "What do you mean?" replied Naruto comically, as he already knew the answer to the question. Athena's head burst through the window, and she looked down at Naruto. "How exactly did you catch up so fast? We were moving at 2 magical horses' fastest speed. There is no way you could have caught up." Naruto brought up both his hands, and slowly waved them to the side. Then he answered, "Magic." Athena bit down on her lip at the ridiculously vague answer. Her hands clenched onto the window frame until her knuckles turned white. Then she shouted at Naruto, "Magic? No shit! What do you take me for?" Naruto smirked at Athena's outburst, and was about to respond when Carla beat him to the punch. "It's just as he said," replied Carla, who gave Naruto a nasty glare. Not appreciating his little ride, she crossed her arms in defiance, and she continued, "This stupid man can use magic to amplify his speed. Thus, he can move really fast. Catching up to you is like child's play for him." Athena was taken a bit back, and looked at Naruto with a bit of bewilderment. So this was the extent of a mage. She had never had the opportunity to see magic in use, but it was quite extraordinary. It was more than just throwing out fancy spells, but small things like this really did amaze her. Naruto nodded, and he looked up at Athena. "It's one of many magic spells I use. I'm pretty cool, huh? Don't be so cocky," snapped Carla, making sure that the idiot didn't get a big head. Athena rose an eyebrow, and then proceeded to ask, "So what type of magic spells can you use?" Wendy, who was barely conscious, had been listening to the entire conversation. Mustering her strength, she pushed herself off Naruto's shoulder, and landed on her feet. She wobbled for a moment, and quickly caught herself. She then looked up at Athena. Then, like nothing had happened, she quickly sprouted a smile and began to discuss one of her favorite topics. Well, Naruto uses a lot of magics, but my favorite would be his Ras Dash. Naruto cut off Wendy, and he looked up at Athena. He then brushed his white cap to the side and revealed his katana to Athena. In a swift motion, he unsheathed his katana and revealed the deadly blade. My magic is based mostly on my speed and swordsmanship. Those are my two strongest spells, alongside a few wind-make and earth-make spells. Athena looked at the blade at awe, its black beauty shone in the sky, and then she watched as Naruto quickly placed the blade inside the sheath. Athena then gave an approving nod. I must say that sounds pretty impressive, Naruto. I hope I receive the honor of seeing these skills in action. Naruto shook his head and looked up at Athena. Not to sound rude, but you're better off praying that doesn't happen. After all, I don't wish for anyone to come after your life, Athena. It would be rather troublesome if someone cut you down. Naruto's tone had caught Carla, Wendy, and Athena off guard. Athena blushed a little bit as she saw it as a notion towards Naruto's affection for her, while Wendy and Carla were quickly reminded to wear on an S-rank job. Athena, oddly satisfied with the conversation, sat back into her carriage. I'm gonna clean myself up real quick. Stay close to the carriage, we will be entering the palace soon enough. Naruto looked up and watched as Athena disappeared from the window. He then looked down to his side and looked at the curious eyes of Wendy. Wendy gave him an odd look, and her head was tilted to the side. Naruto looked in front of him and gazed at the marvelous city of Crocus. Crocus is quite the sight, said Naruto to Wendy. He turned around and looked at Wendy, who just kept staring at she would be wanting to wander off to explore. Her sudden silence was putting Naruto on edge. Naruto abruptly asked, What's wrong? Wendy's face flushed red the moment she noticed she had been caught staring. She quickly looked to the side and remained silent. Then she answered, It's nothing. Carla looked at Wendy strangely and was unsettled by Wendy's sudden attitude. Naruto looked down at the girl and then asked, Are you mad that I cut you off earlier? No, replied Wendy as the trio continued to walk. Wendy stopped gazing at the city and looked back at Naruto. I was wondering, why did you lie to Athena? Asked Wendy. Naruto stopped walking. Wendy and Carla both stopped, and they watched as the carriage slowly passed them. When it was a couple meters ahead of them, Naruto turned around completely and looked down at Wendy and Carla. It is better off that way. She doesn't need to know about my higher forms of magic. But she's our client, shouldn't she know the extent of our magic? Inquired Wendy. Naruto shook his head. Her father is our client, she is the job. Carla nodded and looked at Wendy. I agree, she doesn't need to know any more than she needs to know. Wendy frowned and crossed her arms. But I don't like lying to anyone. Grandini told me it was wrong. Naruto took a deep sigh and forced himself to remember that Wendy was only 11 years old. She may be talented in the arts of magic, but she was still so naive. Naruto crouched down, low enough that they were at eye level. Wendy met Naruto's eyes, and by just gazing at them she felt like she had said something wrong. She didn't want to disappoint Naruto, but deep down she felt bad whenever she lied to people. For a moment she felt like crying because she knew how stupid she sounded. Like a little brat that didn't know anything better. Naruto then placed his head on top of her head and gave her a big smile. Then Grandini must have been the best parent you could ever have. To have taught you to be such a respectful young girl. Lying is a horrible thing to do, especially towards your own poison that kills trust. Naruto gazed into Wendy's confused eyes, and he continued. But you need to understand that sometimes it is a necessary evil. I'm not doing it to disrespect Athena, but to protect myself. What? Asked Wendy, a bit confused. How would it protect yourself? I'm an S-rank mage, Wendy. Whether I like it or not, I have made a few enemies. It's better off if they don't know the type of magic I use, so they don't use it against me, replied Naruto. Wendy nodded, understanding what he meant. After all, Naruto was always right. The few months they had been together, he never failed her. Wendy suddenly felt Naruto rub his hand on her head, and her eyes widened at the gesture. Naruto! You're going to mess up my hair! Screeched Wendy, not appreciating another childish gesture from took a step back, and couldn't help but crack a smile. Wendy was an interesting child that never failed to amuse him. He apologized. My bad, now let's get going. We don't want to lose our job. Wendy nodded and returned his smile, Okay. Carla watched their little encounter carefully. She didn't know what it was exactly, but something about Naruto was different. She had never met a human with such an influence like him. The way he was able to control a conservation was unreal, and always find the right thing to say was unnerving. Carla hated to admit it, but the boy was something. He had his quirks, a lot of quirks, but Carla acknowledged that he wasn't the bad guy she thought he was. Carla blinked as she suddenly noticed that Wendy and Naruto had sped off after the carriage. She gritted her teeth, and then she growled, "Hey! Don't leave me behind." She then watched as Naruto turned around and stuck out his tongue at her. A deep growl could be heard from her. "Naruto!" Carla chased wildly after them and shouted, "You stupid man!" Lying. Their arrival to the castle had been just as spectacular as Naruto had imagined it. As soon as Athena had been taken inside the castle, Naruto and his group had been quickly shown to their quarters. Even though they were taken to the part of the castle for the guests of the guests, aka the servants, Naruto had to let out a loud whistle. Naruto had to admit that the royal family really did know how to treat their friends' employees. There was no doubt in Naruto's mind that the room they had been given was better than any hotel they could have found in Crocus. The room was extremely large, and had 10 beds scattered across the room, each one with their own dresser and lamp. The room was decorated with many bright flowers that complemented the bright green painted room. Hanging from the ceiling was a single golden flower the size of a small car, that opens downward into the room. Wendy and Carla really hadn't paid much attention to the room as Naruto had. Unlike the stamina freak, they were pretty happy to have finally found somewhere comfortable to rest. Instead, the pair made their way down the row of beds trying to decide which one was the best. Naruto spotted a wooden door across the room that had a small sign hanging on it. The word bathroom gave Naruto a sense of relief, and very quickly made his way to it. Too immersed in his current objective, he failed to notice Wendy and Carla stop at the 4th bed away from the entrance. A red suitcase caught the girl's attention. "Carla, is this a suitcase?" asked Wendy as she pointed at the obvious red suitcase. Naruto, unaware of the current situation, burst into the bathroom and took several steps into it until he realized a large amount of steam in the hot vaporized water quickly surrounded Naruto's eyes, and Naruto took a step to the side. The steam quickly escaped into the adjoining room, and it didn't take long until Naruto stared at the back of a red-haired individual. The individual stood in a bathtub as their wet red hair draped down to their waists, and when the person turned around, Naruto's face blushed up. "Hello, may I assist you with anything?" asked the red-headed girl as she just stood in front of Naruto without a single amount of shame. Naruto remained speechless as he couldn't help but observe the sight in front of him. The girl was nothing short of gorgeous as she had the perfect hourglass body. It wasn't until Naruto met her brown-colored eyes that he broke from his trance. Naruto quickly looked away and tried to back out as fast as he could. All while Naruto babbled, "I'm so sorry! I had no idea someone dash." Then to Naruto's dismay he slipped on the wet floor and went tumbling straight into the bathtub filled with hot water. Lying. Naruto couldn't remember the last time he felt so embarrassed. Sitting on the edge of the bed with his head looking down on the ground, one might think he was a kid about to get shouted by his parents. Carla and Wendy both sat next to Naruto, both with different thoughts on the matter. Carla fumed at the idea their so-called companion had just been caught peeping, while Wendy was still thinking about the red-headed girl's ability to requip clothes at a moment. The red-headed girl now sat across the three on a separate bed. She now wore a sleeveless white blouse accompanied with a blue skirt that hovered slightly above her knees. Urza wore a pair of long black boots that came up to her knees. Naruto peeked up to look at her, looking rather neutral about the whole ordeal. Naruto felt bad admitting it, but she looked just as good dressed as she did naked. That's when the red-headed girl decided to speak up. "I didn't think that anyone else would be staying here, or else I would have done a better job of alerting my presence. I apologize to you, sir." Naruto's jaw nearly dropped as he had not expected the apology. Carla was having none of it as she suddenly smacked Naruto's arm, and she huffed. "You don't need to apologize, it's this filth that needs to apologize." Carla then looked over at Naruto, and she stabbed her finger into his chest. Carla then hissed, "Weren't you bragging a couple days about being the best censor in all of Fiori?" Naruto rubbed the back of his head and gave an uneasy laugh as he looked over at the red-headed girl. Realizing that Carla had put him in a very bad position, he found his voice shake a bit as he croaked, "I was caught off guard. I bet you just wanted to peek. Carla! Pleaded Wendy at last. Carla jumped a bit, not expecting Wendy to raise her voice. She turned around slowly as she faced away from Naruto and towards Wendy. Now having Carla's attention, Wendy then tried to defuse the situation for Naruto and explained. I don't think it's fair to blame Naruto. I mean, he's probably tired from walking all day like us. I just don't believe Naruto would be capable of such a thing. But Wendy shook her head, not accepting Carla's attitude against Naruto, and then added, Can you really blame him if his sensor ability wasn't working him? He carried us at blinding speeds for the last hour of the trip. He was just super tired. Carla didn't say anything as she conceded to Wendy's argument, but she crossed her arms as she was not fully satisfied with the answer. The red-headed girl gave Wendy a smile, as she was enjoying Wendy's protective nature towards the Naruto. Naruto cleared his throat, getting the attention of the three girls. He then looked over at the red-headed girl and extended his arm to her. He then offered an apology. I offer my sincere apologies. I didn't mean to run into you in the bathroom nor less peek on you. I would like to start off with an introduction this time. I'm Naruto Uzumaki from Kate's Shelter. The red-headed girl reached for Naruto's hand and shook it. I'm Urza Scarlet from Fairy Tail. Urza, repeated Naruto as he let go of Urza's hand, letting the name roll off the edge of his tongue. Naruto narrowed his eyes for a moment as he took a harder look at the girl. The girl was without a doubt a guild member of Mystigans, but Naruto had heard the name before. Urza Scarlet! Nearly shouted Wendy as she jumped on top of the bed. Both Carla and Naruto quickly looked up at Wendy as they had never seen the girl so excited in her life. Wendy gave a little shrill as she pointed at Urza, and tried to find the words to say. She then finally exclaimed, I can't barely believe it! Urza looked over at Naruto for an explanation, but Naruto was just as dumbfounded as Urza. That's when Wendy finally managed to squeal. You're the famous Urza Scarlet, Titania! The strongest female wizard in all of Fiori! Proclaimed Wendy as a small blush suddenly appeared on Urza's face. Quite not used to the attention that Wendy was giving her. Wendy further added, I've heard tales about your strength and power from the Sorcerer's Weekly. Carla and Naruto gave a small ah, as they remembered the trash that Wendy adored to read in her free time. Naruto then looked over at Urza and had to give a grin as the girl was turning a shade red. So there was something that embarrassed the girl. Naruto was almost starting to think she was some type of robot. Urza waved her arms denouncing Wendy's claims, and she replied, I wouldn't say the strongest of all of Fiori, but I am the strongest female wizard in my guild. Naruto couldn't help himself as he crossed his arms, and gave her a teasing smile. He then added, I would have to disagree, Titania. Even I, a newcomer to Fiori, have heard grand tales of your exploits. I must say I never imagined I would run into a guildmate of Mystigan in a place like this. Carla gave Naruto an odd look. A newcomer? This was news to her. She had always believed that Naruto had been born in Fiori. Naruto didn't notice Carla catching on to Naruto's slip, and that's when Urza looked over at Naruto and once again waved both of her hands at Naruto. Then, just like with Wendy, she also began to deny the claim. Oh please, you're too kind, Dash. Urza stopped halfway through her sentence. Gone was the blush on her face, and instead she tilted her head to the side. She looked at Naruto for a moment, and then she asked, Mystigan? You know Mystigan? Shit. Naruto couldn't believe he had slipped up. Naruto just stared right at Urza and tried to keep his eye from twitching. He was just the god of slip-ups, and now he found himself in a potentially bad situation. Mystigan? Who's Mystigan? Asked Wendy, who had dropped her starstruck look. Carla was standing next to Wendy, and gave Naruto a suspicious look. She then added, And what was that about you being a newcomer to Fiori? You told us that you were working for the Magic Council before joining our guild. Urza looked at the girl and the cat, and then back at Naruto. Talk about looking suspicious, thought Naruto as he read Urza's mind. Naruto took a nervous gulp, and he tugged away his hand from Urza. He looked at Urza and gave her a smile. Well, you could say me and Mystigan go way back, before I started working for the Magic Council. Line. Did you hear? Came the question from a rather ominous person. Two figures rested in the shadows of some alley in the streets of Crocus. A man was kneeled in the presence of the other. The figure standing up was the one who had asked the question. His body completely hid in the shadows of the alleyway. While the other man was kneeled in the rays of the setting sun. The kneeled man wore a weird attire, which consisted of a heavy black coat with blue pants. He wore metal boots that came up to his shin. He also wore metal black gloves that gave him a rather odd appearance. However, what was really odd was the mask he wore. It was a black ski mask that completely hid his face except for a small patch. It was like someone had ripped a piece off the mask, but in that patch there was a small amount of his skin showing. A small lightning tattoo was located on his right cheek, and the only thing visible from his whole face. The man hidden in the shadows looked down at the kneeled assailant in front of him, and he asked, "So tell me, Robert, did you hear?" "No," simply replied Robert. The man in the shadows quickly informed Robert. "Urza Scarlet is supposed to accompany the princess and her guests to Magnolia tomorrow." "Fairy Tales Titania?" "Yes, a very fortunate set of events for us. Had it been anyone else, it might have been a nuisance, but her magic and the rest of the guards will be no match for yours," answered the man. Robert closed his eyes for a moment and nodded. He then asked, "Anything else?" "Everything else will go according to our plans. Soon enough the country of Fiori will fall to the hands of Alvarez Empire." Robert finally looked up at the man hidden in the shadows, and replied, "As you say, Mr. Wizard Saint. Do not call me by that title, it's a dishonor to my title as a Spriggan 12 to be called a Wizard Saint of this land." Robert finally stood up, and faced the man in the shadows. "Just remember our part of the deal. I do not care what happens to Fiori, but I do care about being paid." "Well, of course. Bring me the daughters of the two most powerful men in the country, and you shall have your money." Robert nodded as he turned around to exit the alley. The man who was hidden in the shadows let out a thundering laugh, and very quietly muttered, "Finally, the opportunity to get rid of the embarrassment of 2 years ago has come. Soon, Lord Spriggan, I shall finally return to your side." Line. Naruto's eyes fluttered open, and he quickly stood up in his bed. Sweat poured down Naruto's forehead, and his breathing was heavy. His eyes scanned the room as his muscles tensed up and chakra rushed through his body. His eyes stopped on Wendy and Carla, and just froze there for a second. His breathing calmed down, and his muscles relaxed. Naruto glanced up at the clock, and noticed it was only 2:34 in the morning. 3 more hours until he would have to wake up and get ready for the mission. Naruto took a deep breath, and tossed his feet off the bed. He sat himself up, and continued to breathe deeply. What the hell was that? Nightmares weren't anything new. He'd been having them for months, but this one was completely different. Naruto's arms couldn't stop shaking from just thinking about it. All his nightmares had always been about his time before coming to Fiori, but this one, Naruto lifted his head, and stared up at the ceiling. He then gazed over at his shoulder, and looked at Wendy. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he stared at the teen. He couldn't afford to break now. Naruto had promised Mistigan he would look after this girl. It was the only way he could ever repay his debt to Mistigan. Naruto looked away from Wendy, and stared back at the ground again. Now it's become more than a promise to keep. Wendy wasn't a promise to keep, but an opportunity for Naruto to rebuild his life. She was a way to rediscover himself, to bring happiness back into his life. And the idea of losing her because of his past was starting to haunt him. When will he finally trip over that final string of silk created by his web of lies? Naruto had managed to quell Wendy and Carla's curiosity earlier, but they were sharper than he gave them credit for. Not to mention he also had to come up with lie 4. "Are you awake?" whispered a voice. Naruto turned his head, and looked a few beds away from Wendy's location. Urza was sitting up in her bed, and was looking at Naruto intently. Naruto apologized as he hoped Urza hadn't heard him having a nightmare. "Sorry, I didn't mean to wake you up." "You didn't wake me up," replied Urza as she suddenly gave Naruto a concerned look. Naruto didn't know what to think of the red-headed beauty. She seemed like a genuinely nice person, with a few awkward quirks. Okay, she could probably work on her people skills, but she was a very honest person to speak to. Naruto replied to Urza, "You can't sleep either? Don't tell me the Grand Titania is nervous about escorting the Princess of Fiori." "Of course not," huffed Urza as she puffed out her chest. "I will quell anyone who dares to interfere with my mission." Urza then turned the question on Naruto. "How about you? As a cucumber, don't tell me you lose that cool act when Wendy's not paying attention. What do I have to worry about when I have you, oh great Urza, by my side?" Shot back Naruto. Urza glared a little bit at Naruto, getting tired of the constant mockery of her fame. Naruto let out a little smile. Having fun with the girl, and then he decided to put an end to the game. Alright, I guess it's best if we go back to sleep. We do have a mission tomorrow. Urza crossed her arms. I don't need to sleep, I'm ready to run for days on end. If anything, I'd rather return home as soon as possible. Why? Asked Naruto as he raised an eyebrow. Urza didn't seem like the one to be hasty about things. Urza then looked around, and then jumped off her bed. She then quickly walked over to Naruto, and in not so quiet approach she jumped right onto his bed. Once again Naruto found his personal space being invaded by Urza as she leaned in close to him. Then very quietly she whispered, "There's just something off about the royal guard." Naruto's eyes darted to Wendy's bed, and scanned her sleeping body. Naruto then turned his head back to Urza, who was sitting a few feet away from him. Naruto leaned into her this time, and then he inquired, "What do you mean exactly?" "They're just too weak," assessed Urza as she let out some air from her nose, and then leaned away from Naruto. Urza brought her leg over her knee, and brought her hand up to her chin. Urza added, "Besides the captain of the royal guard, they aren't very impressive." "What was his name again?" asked Naruto as he tried to recall the name of the captain. Urza answered, "Captain Arminius, he's got quite the reputation with the 2 magical swords he carries. Apparently he used to be some big shot S-rank wizard a few years back." "Then what are you so worried about?" questioned Naruto as he played the fool. He then added, "He seems plenty strong." Urza gave Naruto a look of uncertainty, and then she countered, "That's not the problem. It's just, besides him, the rest of the royal guard surrounding the princess isn't exactly strong." Naruto took a hard look at Urza, finding it hard to believe that the girl had seen through the facade. "And they are?" Yuto gave a scoff, which caused Urza to be a bit offended. Naruto then added, "I'm very impressed, you live up to all the hype." "What?" spat Urza, a bit confused with the direction of the conversation. Naruto took another peek behind Urza, making sure Wendy was still asleep. Naruto then looked back at Urza, and he disclosed, "You're not the only one with concerns about the royal guard. Why do you think I was hired?" Urza opened her mouth to speak, but said nothing. Naruto's words still running through her head, she looked at him for a bit. Seeing that the girl was confused, Naruto then added, "Look, I'll just tell you what I know. There's someone out there plotting against Danjunel, and they've tried a few times to get rid of him." "A few times?" "Try 10 times, elaborated Naruto. Naruto then continued, "He's tried several times to communicate to the Magic Council about it, but someone has kept him from doing so. Can you imagine, someone powerful enough to keep Danjunel, the most powerful man in the country, from talking to the government? Something is obviously occurring behind the scenes." "So, you think that has to do with the royal guard?" asked Urza as she was a bit confused why the information was relevant to what she had confided to him. Naruto took a deep breath, and then he muttered, "Maybe I gave you too much credit." "OW!" shrieked Naruto as he had suddenly been given a solid punch straight into his shoulder. Urza had not appreciated Naruto's little shot at her, and Naruto gave a hurt look as he rubbed his shoulder. Naruto then muttered again, "And she has anger issues." Naruto barely ducked underneath Urza's flying fist. Naruto fell onto the bed, and put up his hands in surrender. Very quickly Naruto choked. "I am joking." Urza then crossed her arms, and took a deep breath. She then confessed to Naruto, "I haven't met anyone near as frustrating as you. Usually my guildmates know better than to show such blatant disrespect." "Well, you kinda are a scary woman, Urza," pointed out Naruto as he put a finger on his chin, and then theorized, "Maybe they're scared of you." "They're not scared of me," suddenly defended Urza as she refused to believe that any of her guildmates would have a reason to fear her. After all, she has shown nothing but compassion towards her guild. Naruto quickly shooed Urza by putting a finger to his lips, and whispering, "Quiet down!" Urza stopped her antics, and looked behind her. Wendy rolled around in her bed, and gave out a small snore. Naruto let out a quick breath, and then he got back on topic. "So where was I? You incorrectly stating that my guildmates feared me." "Not that. Before." Urza sat back down on the bed, and then she answered, "The conspiracy about Danjunel, and what it had to do with the royal guard." "Right," acknowledged Naruto as he got back to the important details. Then Naruto finally theorized, Well, now that you've brought up those suspicions about the weak royal guard that has been put together for this, then Mr. Junel might be right about believing that someone might target his daughter. Urza paused for a moment to let the information sink. She stared into Naruto's blue eyes for a few moments before her own eyes began to widen in realization. Then she concurred. That actually makes a lot of sense. If someone from inside the government was trying to get to Mr. Junel, then they might be able to manipulate the royal guard. If their true target is really Junel Corporation's princess, then all they have to do is weaken the guard just a little bit. Just enough so that in the middle of a fight the guard will only be able to protect one individual, and well, not the other. Summarized Naruto as he let it all out for Urza. A few moments of silence fell over the two as they looked into each other's eyes. Urza then asked, "Why tell me this? If you have suspicion that someone is after the girl, then why tell me?" "Well, if shit goes down, there's too many people to look after," replied Naruto as he motioned at the blue-haired girl behind him. Naruto took a deep sigh, and he admitted, "If it was up to me I would have never brought Wendy along, but things got a bit complicated and well here she is." Urza nodded in acknowledgement, and then she agreed. "I see. It would be rather difficult to look after the Wendy and Athena. I suppose I can help you out. My job was only to accompany the princess to Magnolia, not necessarily as protection, but more like tour guide?" finished Naruto for Urza. Urza nodded and she stood back on her feet. Naruto also stood up and looked over at Wendy. That's when Naruto commented, "I wouldn't tell anyone about this. All this is just speculation, and we really don't have any hard evidence. Let's not paint any unnecessary targets on ourselves, and who knows, maybe Mr. Junel is just being paranoid. It would be kinda hard not to with that evidence," muttered Urza as she began to walk back to her bed. Urza turned around to look over at Naruto only to see the blonde gone. She quickly turned around just to have her heart sank deeper into her chest. Naruto sat on the bed calmly with a red book open, and reading very intently. Urza nearly shrieked. What are you doing? I didn't know you were into this kind of naughty stuff," giggled Naruto as he flipped the page of the book. Urza was about to claim it wasn't her book when Naruto began to read a small piece of the book. "Oh, Mitomi. I'm so glad we're back together," moaned Tom as Mitomi nibbled on his. "And oh, spoilers," yelled Urza as she grabbed a nearby pillow and threw it at Naruto with all his might. Naruto ducked underneath the pillow, and he couldn't help but laugh out. "You're a closet pervert." Urza stopped dead in her tracks and gave Naruto a very nasty glare. Naruto couldn't help but return the favor with a big fat grin on his face. However, his grin didn't last very long because a bright light suddenly engulfed the room. Naruto nearly fell off the bed as standing in front of him was Urza wearing her famous Heaven's Wheel armor. She was now dressed in some type of armor that covered her chest with a large metal flower over it, and she wore a large billowing skirt that had metal plating in the upper area. Her stomach and neck were uncovered and she had large metal wings that were made out of individual blades. Naruto gave a nervous laugh as he squealed out, "I suppose it's too late to say sorry? Die. Line. I can't believe you slept through all that," coughed out Naruto as he held a bag of ice onto a red welt on his cheek. Wendy just shrugged her shoulders as she had been surprised to wake up to a bruised Naruto and a missing Urza. Carla gave Naruto a scorned look, and she shot. "Well, you do deserve it after yesterday's stunt. I'm just surprised it took her so long to hit you. What did you do to her anyways?" asked Wendy, as she was curious to why Urza had hit Naruto. Naruto gave an uneasy laugh as he remembered Urza's little book collection. Naruto then uneasily said, "Well, I kind of went snooping through her stuff, and I found an embarrassing book." Carla tilted her head, not sure what would be an embarrassing book. Carla then asked, "Book? What type of book?" An anatomy book. Yeah, an anatomy book," answered Naruto as he came to the right answer. Wendy and Carla gave Naruto a weird look, not understanding what he meant. Naruto just looked at them gloomy and sighed. "They're way too young to understand." "Alright, Wendy, we're about to go meet up with the chief of the Royal Guard," revealed Naruto as he strapped a katana to his waist. Naruto then slipped on his backpack and strapped a scroll to the back of his waist. Naruto then added, "Urza shared the same sentiments as me and she has agreed to go with our plan of protection. All we got to do is convince Chief Arcadios to go along with it." Wendy tilted her head in interest, and it was Carla who asked, "What exactly is the plan?" Naruto bent down to tie his shoelaces on his boot. As he tied them, he explained, "You two will accompany the princess and Lady Athena inside the royal carriage." Wendy gave a nervous look, "While Urza and I will stay as close as possible to the carriage. It shouldn't really alter any pre-existing plans they have, and does make it very easy to incorporate." "Do you really think they're going to allow Wendy just to take a seat next to the Princess of Fiori?" questioned Carla with a lot of skepticism. Naruto finished tying his last boot and looked up at Carla with a grin. He announced, "Leave that to me." Line. Naruto, Wendy, and Carla made their way out of the large castle. Naruto was dressed in his usual orange jacket and black pants with a new black cape and red flame pattern around the hem. Wendy and Carla were dressed in their normal get-up, and the three made their way towards the entrance of the castle. That is when they were met with a giant crowd of soldiers and guards running around in chaos. Naruto quickly scanned the area, and that's when his eye caught Urza's vibrant red hair. Naruto motioned towards Urza's direction, and Wendy caught on. Naruto took about 5 steps forward, when a large sword was quickly put to his throat. Naruto quickly put his hand in front of Wendy and Carla and stopped them in their tracks. Wendy looked mortified as she saw one of the royal guards standing in front of them. The guard barked, "Authorized personnel are only allowed in this sector. Now tell me what the hell you are doing here." Naruto narrowed his eyes and looked down at the sword. He then scanned the area and saw that almost everyone had stopped in their tracks. All the soldiers ready to pounce on him if he gave them a reason. That's when a voice shouted, "Captain? That's enough." A muscular, well-built man of average height approached the fore. He was dressed in a very stylish piece of armor. The man had deep set of eyes and high cheekbones, with a small scar running down from his left temple to the edge of his thick eyebrows. His hair was dark and wavy, sticking up around his head, with prominent sideburns that joined into a curved and pointed beard. The so-called captain wearily pulled back his sword, but did not put it away. The man quickly approached Naruto and stuck out his hand. Naruto eyed the man for a second, before reaching out and shaking his hand. The man introduced himself. "I am Chief Arcadios, the man in charge of the escorting Princess Hizui. I am Naruto Uzumaki. I was hired to be the bodyguard of Lady Athena, but I assume you already know who I am," replied Naruto. Arcadios nodded, and he added, "Yes, I've read your files very thoroughly. A very successful S-rank mage with much respect in the Magic Council." Arcadios looked behind Naruto and made eye contact with Wendy. Wendy had to fight the urge to jump back. Arcadios asked, "And the girl?" Before Naruto could even answer, Wendy decided to introduce herself. She bowed. "I am Wendy Marvel of Kate Shelter." Wendy then stood back up and added, "It is an honor to meet you, Sir Arcadios." "Ha!" barked Arcadios. Wendy felt her shoulders slump as the man laughed at her introduction. Wendy's eye fell to the floor and her face turned red in embarrassment. However, that was when Arcadios waved off the guard and added, "It's been ages since I met such a respectful brat. Follow me, Mr. Uzumaki and Ms. Marvel." "Didn't even acknowledge you," muttered Naruto, and Carla could feel a vein pop in her head. Wendy was no longer embarrassed but rather confused at the man's reaction. The 3 Kate Shelter wizards followed Arcadios towards the middle of the yard. There was one large carriage surrounded by several horses, wagons, and some magical vehicles. Urza was standing near the carriage whereas she talked to a few other soldiers. Urza glanced over and noticed Naruto, Wendy, and Carla. "Urza, I missed you last night after you left," called out Naruto with a straight face. Urza frowned as the soldiers around here gave a few snickers. Urza sighed, and she sassed, "Are you always this annoying?" Naruto shrugged his shoulders, and he revealed, "Only to those who are easy to mess with." Naruto then grinned as he glanced over at Carla. Carla crossed her arms and shot Naruto a glare. It was Arcadios that cleared his throat and asked Naruto, "So, Urza told me you'd come up with a plan to integrate you into our plan without causing major shifts." "Of course," answered Naruto as he pointed at Wendy. "I propose that Wendy and Carla be placed with the princess and Athena." Arcadios rose an eyebrow. "Carla? That would be me, Sir Arcadios," answered Carla proudly. Arcadios took a step back and whispered softly, "You can talk?" "Yes, I'm a special breed of a cat," disclosed Carla, and she added, "I'm also capable of some magic. Wendy here has a special type of magic known as Dragon Slayer magic," pointed out Naruto. Urza perked up at the mention of the name, and she looked at the girl with interest. She then asked Wendy, "You're a dragon slayer?" Wendy nodded, and she told her, "Yes, I am the dragon slayer of the sky." Before Urza could ask any other questions, Naruto further elaborated. "Wendy here is able to use a rare type of magic. She can use healing spells." Healing spells?" stammered Arcadios as he whipped his head to look at the girl. Wendy looked confused as she looked over at Naruto. She then began to ask, "But Naruto, why dash? So, you see how valuable she is," quickly added Naruto as he cut off Wendy. Wendy bit her lip as she suddenly remembered the lesson he told her earlier. Naruto then advised, "I believe the best strategy would be to keep Wendy as far away from danger. If anything was to occur during the trip, she would be more than able to heal anyone from an injuries." Arcadios nodded as it was basic battle tactics to keep your medics protected. Arcadios then inquired, "How about you and Urza? I believe it would be best to keep me and Urza close to the main carriage. I do believe your knights are more than capable to take on any bandits or rogue wizards that may cross our paths. If we were to encounter a wizard powerful enough to get past your guards, then we would be more than able to protect the princess and Athena," explained Naruto. Arcadios nodded, and he praised Naruto. "Yes, a very solid plan to incorporate your skill to our troops." Arcadios then looked over at Urza, and he continued, "We'll go with it since it works well with my already established formation. We don't expect to run into any trouble, so let us hope we won't have any use for your skills. We be leaving as soon as Princess Hijri come forth," explained Arcadios. He then stepped away and started barking orders to other soldiers. The soldiers that had been talking to Urza also moved along, leaving Urza with the Kate shelter members. Naruto glanced down at Wendy and reminded her, "Wendy, Carla, make sure you two are on your best behavior. The last thing we would want for our guild is for Princess Hijri to get pissed at our guild." "Yes, I understand," answered Wendy as she gave Naruto a determined look. Carla just gave a sigh, and she took a shot at Naruto. "At least it isn't you who had to be with the princess. It would be a total disaster if you talked to her." "I'm not that bad," mused Naruto. Urza rolled her eyes and she muttered, "Sure." A fat grin appeared on Naruto's face, and he teased, "Maybe I'm a little mean when it comes with Urza, but how can I help it? She likes that kind of stuff." Urza fumed a little as she felt her face reddened a little bit. Urza then glared at Naruto and threatened, "If you ever speed dash, yeah, you'll kill me. You made that pretty clear last night," said Naruto as it was his turn to roll his eyes. Wendy and Carla exchanged a glance as he wondered what exactly they were talking about. Wendy then decided to ask, "Is it because of your anatomy book?" Naruto had to hold back a laugh as Urza's face turned completely red. Naruto quickly came to Urza's aid, and he reassured Wendy. "Why would she embarrassed about an anatomy book, Wendy? It's just a little inside joke between me and Urza." Urza nodded completely as she didn't say a word. Wendy looked at Naruto skeptically, but she muttered, "Okay." Urza desperately tried to change the conversation and asked Wendy, "So you're a dragon slayer?" Yeah," lamely replied Wendy. Urza was able to gain a bit more composure, and then she asked, "There's actually a guildmate of mine that's also a dragon slayer." "What?" shrieked Wendy as her eyes roared with life. Naruto gave a sigh as she saw Wendy's determination to find her mother. Just the mention of another dragon slayer was more than enough to get her excited. Wendy then asked, "Urza, does your guildmate know where Grandini is?" Urza's eyes softened at Wendy's question, and she looked over at Naruto. Naruto and Urza exchanged a glance of sorrow, and Urza then disclosed, "So your dragon disappeared too?" Wendy's shoulders slumped at what Urza had said. Then she concluded, "So, his dragon disappeared too?" Carla grabbed onto Wendy's hand and squeezed it softly. Carla then tried to cheer up Wendy. "Don't worry about that now, Wendy. After all, we are going to Magnolia, where Fairy Tail is located. Maybe if you meet this guildmate of Urza, then you might be able to figure out a clue about your mother." Wendy perked up at the prospect and nodded. "You're right." Suddenly the sound of trumpets being played filled the courtyard. Everyone whipped their heads to see a man dressed in armor. He stopped playing the trumpet and announced, "I now present you, Princess Hijri." Almost instantly every soldier got into their positions and bowed in the princess of the princess. Naruto patted the back of Wendy's head and encouraged her to do the same. Naruto and Urza quickly bowed as Princess Hijri and Athena walked out of the castle. The princesses made their way towards the main carriage. Naruto looked up and met Arcadios' eyes. The man motioned Naruto to walk up and Naruto nodded. Wendy, Carla, follow my lead, instructed Naruto as he made his way towards the carriage. Naruto, Wendy, and Carla go the carriage at the same time as Princess Hizui and Athena. Now closer in person, Naruto took a good look at the princess. Hizui was a slim, petite woman. She had long wavy light green hair that reached down to the middle of her back. Hizui had long green eyelashes that only made her eyes pop out more. The princess was dressed in a long-sleeved white and pink dress. Naruto was no expert in clothing, but he could tell with just his eyes how delicate the material she was wearing. In her head she wore a tiara with 7 gemstones, with the largest placed in the middle and the rest following outwards. She also wore a large silver necklace with a large pendant, and a pair of earrings with 2 large gems in both of them. My Highness, it's an honor to meet you, divulged Naruto as he bowed, and then he introduced himself. I was hired by Mr. Junel to look after Ms. Athena. It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Uzumaki, replied the princess with a bright smile. She looked over at Athena with a giggle, and Athena just smiled. Naruto had to force himself not to sigh, and then he introduced Wendy. This young lady is my teammate Wendy Marvel and her companion Carla. An honor to meet you, bowed Wendy as she mimicked Naruto. At this point Arcadios then stepped in, and explained Wendy's position. Lady Hizui, Wendy will be accompanying you inside of your carriage. She is able to wield a rare type of magic that allows her to use healing magic. We hope not to intrude on your privacy, but hope to keep Wendy alongside you, in case anything was to occur. Athena did not look very enthused about Wendy joining them, but Hizui's eyes lit up at the sound of Wendy's magic. She gushed. Healing magic? Whoa, I thought it was considered a lost magic. Wendy's face turned a bit red as she opined. It's really not that great. I love learning about magic a lot, Wendy, so please don't undervalue your healing magic. I read in a book once that it's been ages since anyone has seen healing magic. In fact, I believe it was dash. Hizui didn't get a chance to finish as Athena cut her off, and then snickered. Please don't get Athena talking about magic. She'll never shut up. Naruto rose an eyebrow at the blatant disrespect towards the princess, but wasn't really surprised by Athena's personality. Hizui didn't seem to take offense, but she blushed a little bit. Naruto then asked, So, it's perfectly fine if Wendy rides with you? Of course. Please, Wendy, I'd been honored if you joined me on my trip, offered Hizui. Wendy smiled, and she quickly whispered to Naruto. She's super nice. Naruto nodded in agreement, and that's when Arcadios motioned for them to enter the royal carriage. Hizui and Athena both entered the carriage, and Wendy and Carla followed close behind. The moment the door closed, Arcadios grabbed Naruto's shoulder and muttered, You're welcome. Naruto narrowed his eyes and quickly looked over at the carriage. I see why you are the chief and commander. Naruto looked over at Arcadios and gave him a grateful look. Thank you. It's the least I could do. I'll admit that Lord Junel's suspicions are concerning, and I would hate to put a child on the battlefield, revealed Arcadios. Naruto rose an eyebrow. So, he told you after all? Yes, but let us hope they are wrong. Naruto nodded in agreement, and he made his way back to Urza, praying that nothing would happen on their trip, as he could never live with himself if anything happened to Wendy because of him.